Disclaimer. This show is for discussion and entertainment purposes only. The Finding Gnosis show is a platform for open discussion, exploration, and opinion sharing. The views expressed by hosts, guests, and participants are personal opinions and do not constitute professional, medical, legal, or financial advice. All topics discussed are only intended to spark curiosity, entertain, and encourage independent thought. If any subject interests you, we strongly advise conducting your own thorough research using reliable and professional sources. Critical thinking and due diligence is key. Stay curious, stay informed, be well, be lucky, and don't be an arsehole.
Through the cosmic indifference and through despair, we dig for meaning that might be there. No promises of comfort or bliss, just truths we strive not to dismiss. This is the Finding Gnosis show, where illusions break and deeper truths grow. Philosophy and thought light the way through the dark toward a brighter day. Not endless struggle, but a fight worth the cost, seeking the meaning we thought was lost. Pessimism asks, why even try? We answer with questions reaching the sky. A critique of the systems, the myths we hold. A reflection on truths both stark and bold. Depressive realism clears the haze, while hope takes root in critical gaze. We search for a path, no matter how steep, to find the truths that lay buried deep. This is the Finding Gnosis show, where illusions break and deeper truths grow. Philosophy and thought light the way through the dark toward a brighter day. Not endless struggle, but a fight worth the cost, seeking the meaning we thought was lost. We don't promise rest, but a journey to uncover what's best. In cosmic indifference we still find might, to question, to change, and to ignite. Welcome to Finding Gnosis, where truth takes a stand. Together we search, together we understand. Through reflection, critique, and bold exploration, we strive for meaning and revelation. The journey begins, the truth will unfold. This is the Finding Gnosis show.
Hello to whoever is there. Welcome again to the Finding Gnosis show. The stream is now live, so please do like and share it if you're here to help bring in new voices and fresh perspectives. We do need to avoid stagnation. We need newcomers to bring us an opportunity to perhaps find Gnosis. That's what it's all about. So yeah, please do share and like the stream for the algorithm, because that's the way it works. If it's got enough likes, it will show up, or it'll be more likely to show up in other people's feeds. So tonight we will be talking about fear in the media, in politics, the politics of fear, and how it is enlivened in other humans to perhaps shape their perception, to control them, perhaps to move them this way or that, or to maybe make them believe in untruths, falsities, maybe to benefit the powers that be over everybody else. Well, I don't quite know what we're going to find out, but I do know one thing that fear is often used in the media. Indeed, it seems they say sex sells, but I believe fear sells as well. Um, as for fear of not having sex, well, that's probably another thing that sells. But anyway, if you are here, please come on here and join me as we try to unwrap this topic. And by the way, if any of you do find anything interesting for us to read here or watch that's related to tonight's topic, please do share it in the live chat. I'll be happy to have a look over it and discuss it with you. So yeah, if you are part of the show too, so feel free to share any material you find related to fear in the live chat, and we will use it to try and find out more about the matter, to see what we can learn. So I suppose we'll have to look at what fear is first of all. And I did just Google it, and it says fear is a fundamental human emotion that triggers both physiological and psychological responses, influencing our thoughts and behaviors. The physiological responses to fear include increased heart rate and blood pressure, which prepares the body to respond swiftly to danger, accelerated breathing, which ensures muscles receive more oxygen, hyper-focused attention. It concentrates one on the threat, potentially neglecting other stimuli. Okay. Sweating regulates body temperature during heightened alertness. Digestive slowdown, that's interesting. So your digestive system slows down when you're in a state of fear to help you conserve energy for immediate action. Pupil dilation enhances vision to better assess the environment. Okay, these are the kind of um, more obvious things that occur when one is in fear. Um, but there are lingering effects as well that maybe not so obvious. But they're the physiological effects, and that's when a body is body is confronted with a perceived threat, and your body initiates the fight or flight response. Okay, and that's kind of the symptoms of the fight or flight response. These reactions are orchestrated by the amygdala, a brain region pivotal in processing emotions like fear. There are cognitive and behavioral effects as well from fear. Fear does profoundly impact our cognition and behavior. So, attention and memory. Okay, fear can affect various cognitive functions, including attention and memory. Um, it can also, I presume, that's to do with like hyper focus. So you'll focus on that which you're fearful of, and maybe you will forget about other peripheral matters. Decision making. Under fear, individuals may make hasty decisions, prioritizing immediate safety over long-term considerations. Okay. Um, Avoidance behavior. Fear often leads to avoiding situations associated with the threat, which can limit experiences and opportunities. So it can have a reduction in a person's sense of well-being and life experience, positive life experience. Social withdrawal, persistent fear or anxiety may result in reduced social interactions, impacting relationships and support systems. Yeah, and they do say that such kind of severe social withdrawal does lead to a lower life expectancy. So there you go. Understanding these responses is crucial for recognizing how fear influences our daily lives and for developing strategies to manage it effectively. Okay, that's fear, and yes, it is a survival tool. It's necessary to have fear. There are healthy forms of fear. I mean, it is rational to be fearful of some things, but there are also irrational forms of fear. There are unhealthy forms of fear that can cause us mental distress and even physical problems. You know, because it's a slippery slope to not being able to move because of anxiety, maybe staying in bed all day or staying indoors, and your physical health is impacted as well. Anyway, the Necker King is here, aka D Prophet, who says fear is the very tool the Batman uses to incapacitate his enemies in battle. Yes, the psychology of fear, making others fear you. Yes, very, very important in a lot of public life, especially in fighting, boxing, UFC, etc., sport, and one would think politics. Making the opposition fear you, that you're very well intellectually endowed, and perhaps they might be nervous to challenge you and stutter and make all manner of mistakes to make them seem incompetent. But anyway, we've got a few papers here, so we might have a look at them. If you have anything, please do share them, as I've said. So we've got one here. It's about fear as a political tool. It's a critical analysis of Representative Taylor Green's fear mongering. This is a Polish article, I believe. Okay. Abstract. Anyway, this paper examines the fear mongering narratives employed by a politician from Georgia in her political strategy, utilizing sources such as campaign material, legislative proposals, and press releases to a content analysis method. The paper identifies three primary based narratives this politician uses: threats to the country, threats to freedom, and threats to children. Okay. Moreover, the impact of fear-mongering in Representative Green's electoral strategy and its success in Georgia's 14th congressional district, known for its conservative leanings, are also explored. By understanding the effectiveness of fear-mongering, this research sheds light on the dynamics of contemporary political discourse in the United States and its potential consequences. Okay, so this is all over the world, though. It's not just in the US. Some Polish words there I can't, unfortunately. The presidency of Donald Trump will undoubtedly be remembered as groundbreaking for several reasons. One of those is the number of lies and misleading statements a sitting president tells. Okay, during 4 years in office, so this is the last time he was in, according to the Washington Post count, Trump has made false claims 30,573 times, increasing his daily average of lies from 6 during his first year to 39 during his last. Okay, that's according to Kessler, Rizzo, and Kelly. There's a paper on that. While this political environment motivated many progressive individuals to run for office or simply vote, it also gave a sense of encouragement and safety to conservatives whose political views lie on the far right side of the spectrum. Trump's presidency normalized controversy. It was in that type of a political climate that misinformation could flourish. And just 2 years into his presidency, in a surprising electoral victory, Marjorie Taylor Greene, a CrossFit gym owner, gun enthusiast, rapid conspiracy theory believer, and self-proclaimed non-politician who prides herself in being a wife, mother, and Christian above all, was elected as the U.S. representative for Georgia's 14th congressional district in a landslide win of 75% of the vote. 2 years later, she won re-election with a large margin of 32%. Okay. Interestingly, Green's primary electoral strategy from the beginning was centered around villainizing leftist politicians, who she labels as socialists and communists, often interchangeably, and framing them as the biggest threat to America. And this is still going on today, folks. You will see it in the MAGA speeches that brought them back into power, and you will see it in even the Congress last night. The demonizing of the Democrats, making them look like naughty people, villains, even. That narrative has evolved, adding several major talking points and other villains. This type of electoral strategy can be classified as fear-mongering, sometimes known as fear control, a tactic involving manipulating public sentiment deliberately through amplifying and exploiting fears and anxieties by a subject in a position of power. Okay. Politicians often employ this strategy to achieve various objectives, such as garnering public support, mobilizing voter bases, or advancing specific policy agendas. Fear-mongering involves the strategic framing of issues so as to exaggerate potential threats, instill a sense of urgency, and portray opponents as dangerous or hostile forces plotting against the state's overall well-being. Fear-mongering, or even incompetent to the degree that it could cause, or they have caused severe harm. Trump keeps singing the same song now, doesn't he? Now that he's in power, oh, it's all Biden's fault, Biden. And he's creating this fear story that the Democrats are so incompetent, so terrible that they are the cause of America's downfall. Fear mongering seeks, but that's nothing new. That's what all politicians do, isn't it? To blame the opposition. Fear mongering seeks to shape public opinion and sway political outcomes through the skillful use of methods such as emotionally charged language, vivid imagery, and selective presentation of information. Excessive use of this strategy goes hand in hand with political polarization. Okay. It can have severe consequences relating to the safety of vilified individuals or contributing to increased politically motivated violence, evidently seen at Capitol Hill on January the 6th, 2021. Anxiety, fear of crime, general distrust, and belief in a dangerous world resulting from successful campaigns of this fear-mongering type are also essential factors in high rates of gun ownership, which in turn has an impact on gun violence rates. This paper aims to identify and analyze the central tropes in Marjorie Taylor Greene's political narrative and determine how successful that type of strategy is. The methodology includes a content analysis of source materials in the form of Representative Greene's legislative proposals, campaign materials, and press releases available on her official and archived websites. Elements of quantitative methods based on comparative statistical data, such as election results or results of elections, are also employed. Several data analysis tools, such as the Cook Partisan Voting Index, were used to provide an electoral context of the congressional district of this representative. Lastly, the implications of fear-based strategies on the democratic system. That's the system, not the Democratic Party. Personal safety and political polarization are stated. Let's have a quick look, see if anyone has commented. Oh, Brother Marcus is here. Sorry, Brother Marcus, I will go to my settings. So you want me to toggle your noise cancellations? Okay, sorry about that. Audio, let me see. Reduce background noise. Is that better? Hopefully. I will await your response before I continue reading. If you're still there, that is. Maybe it was so bad that you left. But I have toggled said background noise cancellation setting. Oh, lovely. Great stuff. Thank you, Brother Marcus. Okay, where were we? So we're moving on now. The 14th Congressional District of Georgia analysis. Okay, Georgia's 14th congressional area comprises rural and urban communities and spans several counties. This presents a distinctive political landscape. Recent years have seen a change in the demographics of the 14th Congressional District, particularly a rise in racial and economic diversity due to population growth. While the district's population is still predominantly white, as of February 2023, 70% of active voters in the district were white and not of Hispanic origin. There has been an increase in the number of people of color, people who identify as African Americans or Black, now constitute 12% of active voters, but are still less than the overall percentage of black voters in the state, which is 29%. Election Data Hub. Okay, so that's where they got that from. The political climate in the district may be impacted by this demographic change as candidates and campaigns increasingly tap into the racial tensions that can result from such diversification in a deeply conservative state. Okay. I don't quite understand this. People who identify as African American or black now constitute 12% of active voters. Okay. Okay, sorry, that's active voters. So, but are still less than the overall percentage of black voters in the state, which is 29%. I don't understand that. I'm sorry. I don't understand. Maybe I'm not reading it right, but anyway. Okay. The political climate in this district may be impacted by this demographic change as candidates and campaigns increasingly tap into the racial tensions that can result from such diversification in a deeply conservative state. This racial tension is illustrated by a 2021 data from the US Department of Justice. The state of Georgia notes an annual increase in the number of hate crimes motivated by race, ethnicity, or ancestry, which more than doubled within the last few years. Okay, so from 77 incidents in 2019 and 132 in 2022, 164 in 2021. Okay, I'm sure it went up again after that. The 14th congressional district's predominantly conservative leanings are one of its defining characteristics. Historically, the state of Georgia has continuously elected Republican legislators, making it a stronghold for the party. For example, for the last 20 years, the state had only Republican governors. Since 1984, Democratic candidates have won in Georgia only twice out of 10 presidential elections, including most recently in 2020 by a 0.2% margin, thanks to strong Democratic support in the urban and racially diverse Atlanta metro area. Hello to anybody from the Atlanta metro area who might be here tonight listening. Okay, so the voting habits reflect this conservative sway, with Republican candidates often drawing substantial support in both local and federal elections. For the past 10 years, the district had only Republican representatives in the U.S. House of Representatives. Okay, that is evident in the Cook Partisan Voting Index, which measures how each district performs at the presidential level compared to the nation as a whole. According to the newest report published in April 2023, when this was written, Georgia has a PVI. I don't know what that means. Does anybody know what PVI means? Partisan Voting Index, is that what it is? I'll have to look that up. PVI of R+22, which means, so it's saying us, which means the district has performed an average of 22 points more Republican than the national average, coming 28th on the list of the most Republican districts in the country. So it's obviously doing very well for the Republican Party. Interestingly, in the 2017 report, Georgia had a PVI of +27. Okay, it was even higher for the Republican Party, meaning that Georgian voters from District 14 are now less likely to be voting for a Republican candidate than just a few years ago, even though it's still quite a lot. That is reflected by the smaller margin of Republican Representative Green's win during her re-election compared to her first run for office, which in 2020 constituted 50% and in 2022 32%. What is important to note is that Representative Green's 2020 win can be partially attributed to the withdrawal of the Democratic candidate Kevin Van Alstall, whose name, despite this, remained on the ballot, earning over 25% of the votes. Looking solely at the number of people who decided to cast their votes on her during her re-election, Representative Green's voter base decreased by about 26%, from 229,000 to 170,000. Okay. This means that Mrs. Green lost almost 60,000 votes from her electoral base, indicating potential dissatisfaction. Okay, now I'm going to go skip on because this is just giving us a history of an election I don't really care about. I just want to know about the fear-mongering techniques. Researcher Davo Marco defines fear management as a subject of power's ability to recognize the manipulative potential of fear, to define its content, the object of fear, and its scope, and to use various techniques to spread it in order to create a context of fear within which ordinary individuals will be easier manipulated and controlled. Okay, that's Davo Marco. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, to successfully exercise this type of strategy, according to Marco, one must define who or what is the object of fear or the scapegoat, various others or enemies, okay, the villains, who is supposed to feel the fear and to be the receptor of the message, and who is the mediator controlling the narrative and the flow of fear in the public space. Sociologist Barry Glassner identified 3 techniques of fear mongering. Okay, repetition. Okay, portraying isolated incidents as trends, and thirdly, direction. Hopefully, we'll get in. During the past few years, the American public has noticed a significant increase in the popularity of right-wing populism, as voters are being increasingly attacked by fear-inducing narratives from the media, as well as from Republican politicians. A close look at Representative Green's campaign materials, political statements, press releases, and introduced legislation shows a complex array of causes she is involved in that nevertheless form a complete picture. Her Congress campaign website showcases 9 issues she put at the center of her electoral strategy. She promises to defund the FBI. This is what she was promising back before she got elected again. To defund the FBI, to impeach Biden, to investigate Fauci, that's Anthony Fauci, the doctor, to protect children, well, you can't lose on that one, to end abortion in America, okay, another very, very important matter in America, to protect the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, I believe, right? America first, and defend traditional American values, to secure the borders. And her main website's homepage highlights 3 initiatives: Protect Children's Innocence, the Protect Children's Innocence Act, the impeachment of President Joe Biden, okay, and Protect America First Act. Okay, these 3 acts are among 39 she introduced during her term in office. Some of the others included the impeachment of Nicholas Mayorkas, whoever that is, Secretary of Homeland Security, there you go, Merrick Garland, Attorney General, of Christopher Asheray, who was the director of the FBI, of Matthew Graves, the U.S. Attorney for D.C., okay, and designating Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. Okay, anti-fascist group Antifa was designated as a terrorist organization, a domestic terrorist organization, okay, under her stewardship. In America, all right, where was I? Okay. And several acts like Protecting Mothers and Babies from Terrorism Act, the 21st Century Free Speech Act, the Justice for Vaccine Victims Act of 2022, Kyle H. Rittenhouse Congressional Gold Medal Act. Okay, that Rittenhouse was that young guy who shot that bloke in apparent self-defense, right? And he got all the Proud Boys all like getting horny for him and stuff afterwards. Anyway, the Fauci Act and more. Her first ever introduced legislation was to impeach President Biden for enabling bribery and other high crimes and misdemeanor. Okay, misdemeanors. Okay. Several tropes in MTG as she's been come to know now, political narrative regarding fear-mongering strategies can be detected. Most important, can be divided into three categories: threats to the country rooted in the Red Scare era, so that's like the McCarthyism, the anti-communist era of the 60s, the 50s, 60s, threats to freedom and threats to children. The Red Scare refers to a period of intense fear and paranoia about communism, socialism, and leftist ideologies that swept across the United States during the early to mid 20th century. Okay, it emerged in two distinct waves. The first Red Scare, related to the Russian Revolution, okay, which occurred around World War One, and the second Red Scare, which emerged during the Cold War era following World War II. Both periods were characterized by widespread fear of communist infiltration and espionage. Okay. Within the United States, this fear seems to take root deeply in the fabric of the United States to this very day. It can be and still is tapped into by conservative politicians, a lasting legacy that can be easily abused. This is conspicuous in Marjorie Taylor Greene's campaign materials and political strategy in general. The most obvious example of that is her slogan, "Save America, Stop Communism." Okay, or a statement on her electoral site, while the Communist Democratic Party wields ever more terrifying authoritarian power over the people of America, Marjorie Taylor Greene is leading the resistance. Yes, I'm sure. Of particular interest is her first campaign spot, now archived, which uses strong visual messages in the form of stark imagery of the so-called Squad, the Democrat representatives Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Presley, and Rashida Tlaib. Yeah, all two of whom were the first Muslim women sworn into the House. Okay. Vivid red images and drastic font, Representative Green tries to convey a sense of threat to the US, which these four women seemingly pose along with their dangerous ideas. On the same site, Marjorie positions herself against the left-wing socialists who want to wreck her country. Okay. Home, Marjorie Greene for Congress. Okay, what can be noticed is a shift from villainizing socialism, okay, in the early stages to communism. Later on, these two terms are often used interchangeably, seemingly synonymous to her and her voters. Yet communism seems to bring more terror amongst Americans, and perhaps that could be the reason for that shift in terminology. Okay. Lately, journalists like David Graham have started to point out a new conservative bogeyman: wokeness. Okay, a trend he backs up by the popularity of this theme in Fox News, a Republican TV channel, and Google search trends. One of her resolutions was to declare the Antifa, short for anti-fascist movement, a domestic terrorist organization, despite a lack of evidence that people affiliating themselves with this social front are in any way organized or interconnected, or that they have or that they pose any significant threat to the country. Okay. In contrast, with various far-right groups responsible, for example, for the January the 6th attack on Capitol Hill. We all know what happened there. You know, a lot of pardons given out by Trump, wasn't there? Am I right? People were freed. Anyway, Marjorie writes, over the past several years, Antifa-affiliated groups and individuals have been burning down cities across the country, destroying property, assaulting police officers, beating innocent people, and causing billions of dollars in damages. Okay. This most likely refers to the chaos that followed some Black Lives Matter protests. Okay. Now, we all know that Black Lives Matter was infiltrated, and indeed it was stirred up a lot by Russian trolls, apparently, online. So you know, you have to be careful the people causing the trouble caused within legitimate, organizations that are, painting something that needs to be depicted in society, talking about racial problems, etc., oppression of minorities. We all know, we should know that these groups can be infiltrated and utilized in a nefarious way by opposition who want to, create division in society, who want to have bogey men and women to point at so that you can be hoodwinked, so that your attention can be put somewhere that is not really the best place for it to be. Your attention should be on the power that is telling you what to do, not on some minority group that has no real power over you. But you never learn, do you? You never learn. Okay. Okay, so there's some chaos apparently that follows some Black Lives Matter protests. While governmental data usually refrains from using terms such as far right or far left when referencing or referring to domestic terrorists, instead opting for terms like racially motivated or anti-government or anti-government. A significant increase in crime and terrorist attacks attributed to the conservative side of the political spectrum can be noted all across the board. Okay, so when all this fear mongering was happening, the right wing started getting a bit angry and violent in general out there in society, kicking off. According to the Department of Homeland Security and FBI's reports between 2020 and 2021, the number of federal investigations into cases of domestic terrorism almost doubled, and most of them were related to the attack on the Capitol by Republican politicians. Okay. Moreover, an analysis of the provided through the Bureau of Investigations Crime Data Explorer tool shows that each year the number of hate crimes committed by white offenders grows, and this group still commits the most crimes of this type, which could be the result of strategy. Yes. A significant trope in her public statements is the idea of a global conspiracy of elites. Oh, a global conspiracy of elites. And now her party is basically having its string pulled by fucking Elon Musk, the richest man. Can you get any more stupid? Anyway, which includes the Democrats. Of her statements also reflected the popular online conspiracy theory QAnon. Yeah. That glorified former President Donald Trump as the chosen one. Well, if he is, will unleash the storm or unmask all influential conspirators. In line with the idea of deprivation in the White House, Capitol Hill, Mrs. Green often uses a juxtaposition to show how she has nothing in common with them. She claims not to be a politician and therefore not corrupt, but instead in the best interest of her constituents, opposed to the evil leftist elites. The evil leftist elites. Fuck me. Seriously. What have we got now? All the fucking corporate elites, beta boys from the tech industry, moving from being years of wokeness to being Republican henchmen. Yeah, in the techno dystopia that is fast approaching the US and all the world. The Zuckerberg, the Bezos, the Musk, the beta boys, the beta boys acting like men because they've somehow amassed power with their computer machines. But they're still beta boys. Take away the machines and invite them outside for a little bit of a fisticuffs. We'll see how far they can last. Anyway, sorry. Fear-mongering based on leftover Red Scare fears is very closely connected to the idea of an outside threat to the country. With time, the direction of the threat moved inwards. That is to say, a fear of Soviet nuclear attacks transformed into a general sense of espionage-related paranoia or of hostile conspiracy within the US government. And now, while outside threats are still crucial in that discourse, the spotlight is on internal domestic dangers, the swamp. Okay, except for the conspiracy of the elites, one of the core causes for Representative Green is related to immigrants and policies that regulate migration, specifically from the southern border with Mexico. Okay, as Miss Green says, Joe Biden is rewarding human traffickers and coyotes who smuggle illegal aliens across the border. Okay, that's in her Protect America First Act, or was. Moreover, on our southern border, Joe Biden has allowed hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of illegal aliens into our country. His administration, along with Kamala Harris, has violated our immigration laws, deprived our Border Patrol of workforce and resources, and created a national security crisis by allowing unknown foreign nationals into our country who wish to harm Americans. Can you imagine what the Native American Indians were saying when the cowboys turned up? Okay. Fair enough. His administration, along with okay, 1 second here. Where am I? That was the impeachment of President Joe Biden when she was crying on about that or wanting it. It is through the use of stigmatizing language and narratives like this one that the Representative Green managed to tap into both types of fear still evident in the American society, of an administration with a sinister agenda that is hostile towards their own people, and of unknown illegal alien outside threats in the form of foreign nationals who wish to harm Americans. Okay, so America, it seems, is being led by schizoid, paranoid individuals scared of everything from the outside to within. That's what's deciding the future of America. That's going to make America great again, is it? Okay, right-wing fear-mongering narratives in the USA often center around threats to freedom, specifically in the context of the Second Amendment right to bear arms, free speech, and the often controversial during the COVID-19 pandemic issue of vaccination or mask requirements. These narratives exploit fears and anxieties by framing potential restrictions or regulations as encroachments on individual liberties. Proponents of Second Amendment rights often amplify concerns that gun control measures will lead to the erosion of personal freedoms to shoot up schools. No, it doesn't say that, sorry. And the government infringing upon citizens' ability to protect themselves. Similarly, mask or vaccine-related fear-mongering narratives invoke arguments around individual autonomy and personal choice, emphasizing the perceived threat of mandated vaccinations as an infringement on personal freedom. As a response to multiple bans on most social media platforms for repeated coronavirus misinformation, hate speech, and general violation of terms and conditions, Representative Green has introduced the Bill HR 7613, 21st Century Foundation for the Right to Express and Engage in Speech Act, through which social media platforms would have a limited scope of control over the content. So not actually a bad thing to have freedom of expression online, but anyway. These narratives tap into deep-rooted beliefs and values associated with personal liberties, fostering a sense of urgency and resistance to perceived threats, while disregarding the broader public health implications or the enormous issue of gun violence, especially towards school children. Interestingly, the same bodily autonomy that must be respected regarding masks and vaccines is ignored whenever the topic of abortion is brought up. It is funny, the hypocrisy that goes on. The third theme of MTG strategies relate to children, arguably the most powerful tool she employs in her fear-mongering, which attracts especially undecided politically parents into her base, in whom she causes in whom such causes tend to strike a chord. Within that narrative, one can find two causes: fighting against inclusive services and communities for transgender people, and a fight against abortion. So, trying to make everyone afraid of all the trannies out there in the world. There's not that many of them, but inflating them to the degree that they are looming over society with their transgenderism. Oh God. I mean, you don't see too many transgender people out there. I mean, there's surely more pressing matters. But anyway, and fighting against abortion. Okay, Marjorie says America's children are being systematically indoctrinated with perverse gender ideology by teachers, mental health counselors, and on social media platforms. Protect Children's Innocence Act, trying to evoke a sense of danger and evil, perverse forces that lure the children into towards deprivation. On the issue of abortion, on the other hand, she uses terminology common amongst anti-abortion activists, such as unborn child. Okay, so it is a child, it's just not out of the womb yet. In her eyes, instead of the universally used within the medical sphere, fetus, which convinces the recipient of the message to think of the abortion as murder instead of a medical procedure. She states unborn children should not be condemned to a painful death for being inconvenient. Such narratives, often LGBTQ+, and especially transgender people, are potential predators or threats to children's safety, despite a lack of evidence supporting such claims. I mean, if she's really so against LGBTQ+ people, why doesn't she want abortions everywhere to stop them from being created in the first place? I say in jest. Anyway, the rhetoric surrounding abortion centers on portraying it as a heinous act that endangers the lives of unborn children. Yeah, kind of the point. Appealing to individuals' protective instincts and moral sensibilities. Emphasize these threats favoring far right to mobilize conservative segments of the population, amplifying their concerns and solidifying support for their agendas. In doing so, they also contribute to the growing problem of terrorist acts committed in abortion or women's health clinics, further creating the issue of unsafe work environment of countless health positions of the country. A vicious cycle caused by the fear-mongering of the right. Returning to Marco's fear management baseline, it is clear that Miss Green's campaign narratives, fit into his definition. She consequently and relentlessly points out those of whom to fear, those who the Americans should fear: immigrants, LGBTQ+, queer, trans, and non-binary people, liberal political elites, and what to fear? She says you should fear the change of the status quo. Okay, which is interesting because they also say make America great again. So why are they saying to fear a change in the status quo, and yet also saying make America great again? Those two things don't really go well together. They seem to be at cross purposes. But anyway, she also says we should fear demographical diversification. Okay. Fuck. Abortion and governmental control. Why is she telling us all this? Dun, dun, dun. Anyway, she does so while appealing to her voter base, who she describes God and country loving brave patriots with superior moral compasses, who stand tall in the face of the societal collapse of our country. As the mediator, she positioned herself as a group member, opposing corrupt politicians. Who else did that? Who else has done that? Trump. I'm not a politician, you know. That old chestnut. I'm not a politician. They say that to get your trust, you see, because they know that you don't trust politicians, generally speaking. So they pretend to be a man of the people, a woman of the people, and just like you. But they're not just like you. They're power-hungry, narcissistic psychopaths looking to control you and get what they can out of a system that is out to rinse you through its fear-mongering and to make you their utility, to make you do what they need you to do. Not in the interest of you as an individual or society, but unfortunately, how to line their pockets, how to make the rich richer. And you're going to see this, folks. You got what you deserve when you voted Donald Trump. You're going to see what happened. You're going to see. Anyway. An question is whether spreading fear-induced anger is a good political strategy. Some studies confirm that anger and fear do boost political participation and engagement significantly more than feelings of enthusiasm. That's interesting, isn't it? So the negative feelings have more of an effect than the positive feelings. Okay. So is there still people listening? Wow. Still people listening. Sorry if I'm boring you to death. Let's keep going. Okay. Some studies confirm that both anger and fear do boost political participation significantly more than feelings of enthusiasm. I suppose it makes sense because if you've been switched on to think that your life or your livelihood or your loved ones are in danger, then that's going to have more of an emotive response, isn't it, than, you know, some kind of happy clappy motivation, you know. Right, because happy clappy motivation, when we're thinking, when we're happy, we know it could end. Okay, we know it could end, and a wolf could turn up. What they're saying is they know who the wolves are. They know the wolves that are coming for us. You know, and in their eyes, it's the immigrants, the LGBTQ plus queer people, and the liberal elites, whoever the fuck they are. Okay. Anyway. Moreover, political ads that use fear appeals were found to provoke information seeking among exposed voters. At the same time, an anxious type of fear was found to decrease the electoral tendency to participate in voting. Yet anxiety dominated by anger in this particular study, anger targeted in the US government monitoring procedures is related to increased political engagement of voters. That's interesting. If you enrage them and you make them think, I suppose it's about positivity. If you can make them think that their fear can be changed into something good for the future, if you make them think they have a power, well, then they're not going to be anxious and they're going to vote. But if you make them feel like, you know, fearful for their lives, fearful of their well-being, and even making a statement, you know, well, then they're going to be likely to vote, aren't they? Or likely to be engaged in the system because their lives, literally. Okay. I suppose it's the degree of fear, isn't it? Because the literal fear for your lives, the literal fear for your livelihood, etc. It's a tipping point, isn't it? So you either realize you're fucked and you don't vote because you're fucked and everything's been taken over by the villains, or you're just on the cusp of the villains taking over and you still have a chance of stopping them. So it's about bringing people into that position on the spectrum where, look, things are bad, but we can just pull it back. It's not gone so bad that we've lost, but We're on the cusp of losing, so you have to do something right now about it. You have to vote. It's about making people's mindset that way inclined, I suppose. Giving them a chance, giving them a hope that they can pull it back or change matters for the best in their life. This means fear-mongering, if done correctly, can motivate certain types of voters. Notably, the type of voter on whom this strategy works best is usually politically conservative with so-called right-wing authoritarianism ideological attitudes. Okay. Furthermore, psychologists argue that several different epistemic motives, dogmatism, intolerance of ambiguity, cognitive complexity, closed-mindedness, uncertainty avoidance, needs for order, structure, and closure. Sounds like, no offense, but it sounds like an autistic person's way of thinking sometimes. Existential motives such as self-esteem, terror management, fear, threat, anger, and here we go, pessimism. And ideological motives such as self-interest, group dominance, and system justification are all related to the expression of political conservatism. That's interesting. The pessimism can be related to an expression of political conservatism. I don't know. Theoretical and empirical considerations lead us to conclude that virtually all of the above motives originate in psychological attempts to manage uncertainty and fear. In other words, a politically conservative voter usually prefers a simplistic explanation of complex issues and would like their candidate to clearly point out those responsible for all the problems in the world. So they want to be spoon-fed all the problems in the world, and they want someone to tell them everything's going to be okay. That juxtaposition of us versus them fits into their idea of the world. Moreover, these feelings of uncertainty and fear related to changing the status quo can quickly turn into feelings of threat and even aggression. During her first 22 years, during her first 2 years in office, most GOP members looked at MTG with disdain and treated her as a fringe lunatic minority of the party and someone who undoubtedly will be out of the office by the next election term. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell described her as the cancer of the GOP because of her loony lies and conspiracy theories. However, month by month, despite the seemingly never-ending string of controversy surrounding her, Representative Green gained popularity while undoubtedly sparking controversy wherever she went. Her scope of power is undeniable. Just a few years later, as reflected by the constant support that she got, and in the words of Republican Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy, who said he will never leave that woman. He will always take care of her. So she went from being deemed on the periphery, a nutter on the edge, to being someone intrinsically valuable to the ideological ways of the party and the plan going forth. Green shifted from the fringes of her party to the center within one election cycle. This is most evident in her committee responsibilities. At the beginning of 2021, she was stripped of several committee assignments. Namely, she was stripped from the Education and Labour Committee and the Budget Committee for incendiary and violent statements from 2018 and 2019 regarding executing Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. So she called for their execution, or she said that they possibly should be executed. And just 2 years later, in 2023, Green took up assignments on some of the most important committees in Congress. the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability, and the House Committee on Homeland Security. A YouGov poll from January 23 states that 31% of respondents see her as very or somewhat favorable, while 37% are somewhat unfavorable or very unfavorable. Interestingly, Representative Green has also been labeled by the 538 political analyst website as a bogeyman used by the Democrats to rile up their voting base. That's interesting, isn't it? So you can use the monster of your opposition to rile up your voter base. So you can say, this is someone you need to be fearful of. You can pick out the biggest monster and say, look, this is the opposition. And you need to fear them. We need to stop them. And therefore, you need to vote for us to make sure they don't get the reins. Right. So the claim that she was viewed as a bogeyman, labeled a bogeyman by the Democrats, is supported by TV News Archive data stating that in January, CNN mentioned Green in 472 15-second clips. Okay. MSNBC mentioned her in 393 clips. Fox News mentioned her in 31. That's the Republicans. So it looks like the Democratic or the left-wing media were mentioning her more. This theory is confirmed by the most recent President Joe Biden campaign released on July the 19th, 2023. A short clip of MTG summing up her presidential accomplishments in a clearly sarcastic tone of voice played over images of actual policies the Biden administration wanted to highlight. This video is one of the most viewed campaign materials ever released, Biden 2023. So in the end, one could say that the Democrats also deployed fear-mongering narratives. They put a spotlight on far-right politicians like Representative Green to underline the dangers that are characteristic of her conspiracy populism. And they lost, unfortunately. Marjorie Greene's immense popularity is reflected mainly in the number of small donations, which proves how efficient she can be. It might have seemed that after Trump's election loss, several controversies regarding Representative Greene's highly controversial opinions, her expulsion from congressional committees, and the consequent weakening of her position in the House, far-right supporters would begin to chip away and retreat from controversial positions. Indeed, the attack on Capitol Hill has sobered up far-right Trump supporters, but there are still signs of support for Representative Greene, clearly. This is written in the past, but yes. This is particularly evident in the ever-growing amount of funds she raised for her activities and subsequent campaigns in the first quarter of her term. So clearly, fear-mongering does work. This is why she did well. And Trump ultimately did well. But he also did well, in my view, because Biden was a pretty poor president, unfortunately, for everybody. I mean, he wasn't very good at presentation, let's just say that, talking in public. He did come across as a little bit past it, or well past his sell-by date, unfortunately. Not to be ageist, but yeah. I think it would have been better if Harris had been in there a bit earlier. That's just my opinion. Anyway, several major politicized issues spark fear in many conservative voters. This is the conclusion for this piece. Through a careful examination of Representative MTG's rhetoric and narratives, three prominent themes have emerged. Threats to the country rooted in the much older phenomenon of the Red Scare, threats to children, and threats to freedom. Interestingly, though, that the Republicans do bang on about threats to freedom. And, yet they're kind of being they brought into into their cloisters Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, all these AI tech boys who are going to be the horsemen of the apocalypse for freedom. Oh, you couldn't make it up. Anyway, these fear-based strategies are designed to manipulate public opinion and consolidate support for her political agenda. Green uses fear tactics reminiscent of the Red Scare era to demonize politicians on the left as well as immigrants. This fuels existing fears and divides the electorate, leading to unproductive political discourse. Yes, very unproductive political discourse, terrible political discourse, and a climate of hostility and distrust. This approach can have disastrous consequences, putting the safety of targeted politicians at risk and undermining the democratic system as a whole. This is especially evident by the number of death threats received by leftist politicians targeted in Representative Green's campaigns, like Representatives Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Secondly, Green leverages fear surrounding issues related to children, employing transphobic propaganda, and advocating for a ban on abortions by exploiting social anxieties about morality, family values, and the well-being of children. She attempts to mobilize support from conservative segments of the population. This fear-mongering tactic not only disregards the rights and dignity of marginalized groups, but also contributes to a toxic and divisive social environment that further endangers the personal safety and often lives of LGBTQ plus communities people. Representative Green also utilizes fear tactics that exploit the quintessentially American need for individual freedoms, including those related to vaccinations, masks, and gun rights. By portraying public health measures as violating personal liberties, she takes advantage of libertarian and anti-government beliefs. This approach not only hinders public health efforts, but also promotes a culture of misinformation and opposition to necessary measures designed to protect the health and safety of the population. Overall, Marjorie Taylor Greene's tactics involve exploiting public fears and creating a social division to strengthen her political power and promote her agenda. She does this by emphasizing threats to the country, children, and individual freedoms. In doing so, she tends to create a clear division of us feeds them, highlighting the otherness of groups like immigrants, sexual minorities, or gender diverse people and leftist individuals who, as she points out, are all to blame for that which is wrong in the country. Additionally, framing herself as a non-politician and rather a member of the people standing up against conspiratory elites, Representative Green presented herself as a model far-right populist politician, according to Jan Werner Muller's definition. Her fear-mongering approach has proven effective, evidenced by her successful re-election and the substantial number of individual donations she received, proving once again that polarizing figures like Representative Green garner the most attention in the US media, regardless of political stance. Okay, that's that. Sorry if that wasn't of any interest to you. Okay, the audio is terrible. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. AS, it's good you're here though. How have you been? I do hope you're well. I've turned the volume up on my microphone. I don't know if that's going to be annoying for you now, but I apologize if it is. I'm going to look up fear in the media, how fear is used in media. See what comes up on YouTube. Might watch a video, take a break after reading that. Fear use in media. I'll type that into Google. Fear use in media. Oh, Stephen King on how fear is used in the media and more. Okay. Right. This is 12 years ago, right? So let me get this. So, Stephen King.
You know, it depends on how much of a news media junkie you are. We're pretty big in my house, and the cable TV runs pretty much 24/7 here. We give it a break every now and then, but when you see something like what's going on in Gaza and Israel right now, that is a fear of some kind of escalation of things getting out of control, and it's a kind of a pervasive thing. It's like a whole body fever. There's a feeling that you can't do anything about it, and you're sort of a helpless spectator to that. And the same thing is true in books and movies that are scary, except that they have a real fine point that you can focus on. This is a situation where a girl's locked in a trunk, for instance, or you feel like there's going to be some kind of a mass murderer on the loose in your small town. So you can focus on that, and you can tell yourself it's not real, which puts it sort of under a glass bubble. You can control it. And, I mean, if you get really scared, you can leave the movie theater or close the book, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of the only thing that you can do with a real life situation like what's going on right now in the Mideast is to turn off the TV, and that's a little bit akin to an ostrich burying its head in the sand.
Yeah.
It's not quite the same thing somehow. So the real difference is that with make-believe, you're really in charge of the thing, and you know on some level that this isn't happening, that it's all a fiction.
So you can step outside of it, right?
You can step outside it. It's interesting, I think, for somebody like me, who's dealt with suspense and fear and paranoia for my whole career, to watch a thing like the political campaign that just took place and see how people play on people's fears. And, it's a little bit depressing in a way to see people saying not, you should vote for me because I'll do this, this, and this and make it better, but you should vote against the other guy because he's going to do these terrible things, that sort of installation of fear.
Okay, Stephen King, who was a bit disheartened by how much fear plays a role in politics. Now, there's another one here, the fear and formulas of TV news. Let's have a look at this one. This might be interesting. This is a TED Talk. So, let's see what this one is going to be like. I just want to avoid the ad, so you don't have to.
So I wanted to start my talk today with a bit of a news hit. You're not quite getting the exclusive on this piece of news, but I did want to share with you all and reveal for the first time publicly that I'm having a baby. Thank you. I have another photo. I'm not blessed with long legs, but I made the strategic decision to marry someone who was, and it appears that decision has just paid off. But we're not going to sit here and talk ultrasound all day. But there is a reason to share with you all, and that's because it directly relates to what I want to speak about today. Because I want to know whether this baby growing inside of me will ever grow up to watch the TV news. And if, down the track, I tell her that Mummy used to be a news reporter, whether he or she will even know what that is. Because everyone keeps telling me that TV news is dying. On a race to the bottom, scramble to work out what to do, yet knowing the inevitable is coming. And from what I've seen over the last couple of years, you'd have to say the signs of extinction are there. The job losses, the redundancies, the changes a couple of years have been enormous. And if you spoke to any number of journalists out on the road right now, I'm sure many of them agree that in many ways the writing is on the wall. So here's what I think. I do think that in some ways TV news is dying. And I think in most cases it's the TV newsrooms that are killing themselves. And I'll go into how they're doing that in a moment. But the first and central point that I want to make today is this, that TV news can and will survive. There will always be a place for it in people's homes and lives. Yes, there'll be endless platforms popping up and they'll continue to exist. But there's something magical about coming home at night, see with your own two eyes the day's news on the telly, especially on a big news day. Something magical about being in a TV room when news is breaking and everyone around you clicks into gear. There's something magical about that. But as I said, I think a number of TV newsrooms have lost much of their magic. And I want to talk today about how we get that back. And this is how today's theme of empowerment fits in. Is that you actually think about it, the very nature of the TV news exchange is one of empowerment. Viewers tune in to be empowered, to be more informed, to get more up to date so that they can make better decisions in their world. That's the essence of it. That's the essence of what we do. But we have a situation at the moment where a number of newsrooms think the more scared we make you feel, the more hopeless we make you feel, the more fragile we make you feel, the more you want to watch. And that's, in my mind, how TV newsrooms will secure their own extinction. So let me give you a couple of examples of how this happens. A little while ago, the newsroom I was working for at the time sent me out to a small Jewish school in Bondi that was building a big concrete bomb-proof wall out the front of the school. It was a legitimate news story at the Times. So I head out there and got shots of the wall workers and a couple of rabbis, got a couple of interviews with them on camera, and I emailed back to the office to let them know what I got. And the message came back saying, great stuff, it goes with the increased terror threat.
Oh, I don't know why it's playing. 1 second.
Before Australia's terror alert level was lifted from medium to high. And so I wrote back and I said, absolutely, context is important. We have to remember here that this school, along with state schools, private schools, Islamic schools, Catholic schools, had all been granted funding under this federal government program for security of schools. And that funding had been granted under years prior. And the message came, no one cares. They're scared now, so they're building it now. And so began one of the worst days I've ever experienced as a news reporter. The same newsroom a little while ago also sent me out to a story, a big Aussie barbecue that was being put on by Sydney's Muslim community. So it was a really positive move by a community that often cops a lot of negative coverage. And I was heading out there, I got a call from my producer saying, oh, look, there's been a bomb scare at a shopping centre nearby. I said, well, sounds a bit scary, it doesn't sound great. Maybe I should go there instead. And she said, well, look, the police aren't that worried about it. So maybe give them a call, find out what's going on, and then we'll make a decision. So I called the police, and sure enough, they weren't worried about it at all. They said, folks, it's over. There'd been a couple of kids making out inside a change room. They got caught, and in the process of being asked to leave, had left a note, which started the whole scare. So I called my office back and said, look, this is not the story, and I think we should leave it. How about I head back to the Muslim barbecue? And she said, look, we've had a direction from someone senior in the newsroom, and it's this. What they want you to do is combine the two stories. So start the story with the bomb scare, the hoax, that had nothing to do with Muslims, and combine it with the Muslims, trying to overcome negative media publicity. And you can imagine how disturbed I was. So these examples bring me to my first point about where I think a number of TV newsrooms are coming undone. Now, while all of them often do a great job and make some great TV, tell some great stories, I think the number one mistake that many of them make is to underestimate their viewers. They operate on the assumption that you as viewers are unable to process any slightly complex storyline beyond the realms of good versus evil, and they operate on the assumption that generally you're not that interested anyway. And I think it's a terrible mistake. I know that not everyone's intellectual and I know that not everyone's academic, but having worked in a bunch of different newsrooms across the country, I feel like I'm a little bit in touch with everyday Australians. And let me tell you, they have minds, they have opinions, they have life experiences, and they care deeply about their families and this country. And they know when you're unnecessarily pumping up a story, and they know when you're trying to scare them to death. And treating them like that won't win their trust or respect. And yet they are the very two commodities a newsroom trades on, trust and respect. Yet how can you expect someone to trust and respect you if you don't even respect them or their intelligence? Another way I think a number of newsrooms are letting themselves down is this sad obsession with petty crime. You may have noticed in the last little while, a number of bulletins have extended their nightly bulletins from half an hour to an hour, often using similar number of resources to generate double the content. And what's more, the competition from digital services has pushed TV to a much more live and local format, because live and local plays to TV's strengths. No one else has the ability to go live at night like TV does, or live at any time of day like TV does. And also there's this push for localisation. You see, TV newsrooms have the resources and the spread to be able to cover Sydney and show you what's going on in your backyard. And when you see your suburb or you'll hear your local area on the news, naturally, your interest picks up. So we have a situation where newsrooms now are turning to petty crime to fill their bulletins up, because petty crime fits the bill. It's easy to show, it's easy to tell, it's really localised, and it's cheap to make. It fits that easy to understand formula that you, the viewer, will be able to take in, because generally there's a goodie, a baddie, there's pictures of violence. And as I said, it's cheap to make. Most of the time the incident itself is captured on someone's mobile phone or CCTV, so they have to pay a cameraman to go and shoot all of this, and they might send out a junior news reporter, juniorish reporter early in the morning to round all this up, so that by the end of the day what you've got is a story that's very localised, a little bit entertaining, a little bit shocking, but most importantly makes you really afraid of where you live. Sure, there are some news stories that are shocking, that do play on your fears. That's the nature of news, and those stories deserve to be told and deserve to be told well. But when a story involves very little meaning and a whole lot of effort trying to shock and scare your viewers, it's not worth running. Another way I think a number of newsrooms are letting themselves down is sticking to what they know too much and being afraid to leave this formulaic approach that we've developed. And it dawned on me recently just how stuck we are to our formulas when I headed out to a school in Sydney. The story was the school principal had sent a letter home to the parents of years 5s and 6s telling them that at that age it probably wasn't a good idea to have boyfriends and girlfriends. And for the newsroom that I was in at the time, this was the perfect fodder for their bulletin, so I headed out and asked the principal. He wasn't to see me, but we did manage to tell the story in a fair balanced way that made us both happy. But something he said to me on that day as he was taking me through the school really stuck with me. He said, "Why is it when it comes to education that you guys are only ever interested in stories like this? Boyfriends and girlfriends. Well, we've got so much more interesting stuff going on here inside this school." And he was so right. When it comes to education and TV news, we generally like to stick to NAPLAN testing. We love that. Happens at the same time every year. HSC top achievers happens at the same time every year. We love a school formal story. They happen at the same time every year. Boyfriends and girlfriends and maybe the occasional knit outbreak. And another type of story that fits this formulaic approach are weather stories. Have you noticed that TV newsrooms are taking weather stories to a whole new level? Because you see, like big fires, snow in weird places, floods, cyclones naturally make great TV. They're really important to tell because they directly relate to people's safety, but also the pictures are captivating. Have you ever caught yourself staring into an open fireplace, the flames flickering? Well, watching fires on telly is a little bit like that, and news directors not. But what we have now is a situation where if it rains for a few days, or it rains a bit hard, or if it's hot for a few days in a row, we make that news. And I watched a bulletin recently where the lead story that night was that Sydney-siders had had an uncomfortable day because of the rain, an uncomfortable day. And they showed us pictures of people with umbrellas and water on the roads and people in traffic jams, all the things that happen when it rains in a big city. What this is just another example of this live and local push, a grab for ratings in certain suburbs and the chance for TV newsrooms to show you what's going on in your own backyard, even if there's not that much going on in your own backyard. Now, having taken in everything I've just said, here's the problem with all of it. You see, there are TV newsrooms that do describe as problematic, or rating success. Are people watching because they just always have? Are people watching because they like the content, and most of the time the newsroom does a good job because they like the newsreader? Are they watching because they like it comes before the news and they just leave their TV sets on? And importantly, can it be sustained through generational change? All those questions require a whole other TEDx talk. But the question I have to ask is this. Is it okay that viewers tune in? Is it okay that TV newsrooms do these things? And is it a situation that we should be happy about? My personal view is it's not a situation that we should be happy about. Because we as a people should be encouraged to care about more than what's just going on in our own backyard. We should be encouraged to think beyond the realms of good versus evil versus wrong. And we should be able to feel hope of outrage, anger and fear, not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all of us as a community. And here's the beauty of the situation. You see, there are different news services out there, and you, as viewers, actually have all the power. So if you don't like what you're getting, and you don't like the way you're being treated, then switch over. And TV newsrooms will get the message because they live and die by ratings. And they have ratings minute by minute that tell them who's tuning in, who's at any given story. So if you start demanding news that you deserve, TV newsrooms will get the message. Hopefully, they'll start to live their game. And this brings me back to the very nature of the TV news exchange. It's one of empowerment. Viewers choose to be
legacy me.
To get more informed, to get up to date, to feel more connected so that they have the knowledge and the power to make themselves and live a more fulfilling life. They don't tune in hoping you're going to scare them to death. They don't tune in hoping you make them more worried about the violence in their suburbs or more worried about the criminal that doesn't pay for a train ticket. Yet TV newsrooms are dishing this up to their own detriment. Sadly, I think a number of TV newsrooms have been swept up in this dish that you can now go to so many different places for news. But what TV newsrooms must is that they can offer so much more.
Interesting how news become part of a dopamine fucking addiction agenda. The way of getting you to look at pixels on a screen so that whoever's publishing it can make money from advertising. Oh no, the stream got suspended for policy violations. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Let me just check. I might not be live anymore, guys. Okay, so I'm gonna have to remove that. Right, we're back. We're back, apparently. Oh. I don't know. Anyway, I listened to enough of her, but she was all right. That lady. She was a newsreader from Australia, and she was talking about how fear is used to, get people to look at in stories that aren't perhaps in their best interest, that perhaps keep them down, that oppress them intellectually, maybe even. And that is an interesting point. The news on our phones now, especially now that the legacy media is moving into, has moved into social media and is popping out short videos, etc., to try and grab your attention. It's all part of the kind of dopamine rush that we're all addicted to, isn't it? It's all part of this grabbing someone's attention with the most outrageous thing possible, tits and ass, or fucking something that's going to scare the shit out of them, or something that's going to make them laugh. It's just something to grab your attention. And unfortunately, we might be missing the wood for the trees. We might be missing what's going on around us, because we're looking at something that often is exaggerated or isn't beneficial to us to kind of focus on too much. So yeah, just as Savina was about to type, nothing is going in at that speed. Yes, I got complaints here. So Divine Hazel says, respectively, why speed it up to the point where you don't even know what is being said? Well, unfortunately, Divine Hazel, my dear sister, I do understand her talking at that speed. I don't know why. I suppose I spent a lot of time listening to or watching Neighbours and Home and Away, which were Australian soaps on television as a child. They used to be on when I came home from school. And my microphone is squeaking again too. Well, all the more reason for you to come on here, Divine Hazel, and take over. The link is there. If anybody wants to come on, please do. So anyway, we got stopped there for a copyright violation. That was TED Talks. They obviously take it very seriously. So I suppose I might go back and read a paper or something. I didn't find any nice presentations this time, unfortunately. Like PowerPoint presentations. No, I didn't find any. In fact, I have to apologize. I didn't do enough research. I didn't do enough before this stream, and I'm going to do better next time. Okay, I'm going to spend a little bit of time delving into the matters that I think are important and trying to come up with something beneficial for us all. But as I said, you too, when you know what the topic is, do feel free to look up something and share it with me, and we can use that as well. If you find anything of interest or something you think we should know about. Let's see what this one is. Okay, what is this one about? So, I'm going to remove that banner because I can't see the whole bloody screen. So sorry about that. Anyway, that's just telling you to join the panel if you want to. So we've got this paper here. So this was about Indian WhatsApp groups. Okay, so I'm just going to read the abstract here. Okay, to see what the paper was about. So WhatsApp is the most popular messaging app in the world due to its popularity. WhatsApp has become a powerful and cheap tool for political campaigning, being widely used during the 2019 Indian general elections, where it was used to connect to the voters on a large scale. Along with the campaigning, there have been reports that WhatsApp has also become a breeding ground for harmful speech against various protected groups and religious minorities. Many such messages attempt to instill fear among the population about a specific minority group. According to research on inter-group conflict, such fear speech messages could have a lasting impact and might lead to real offline violence. In this paper, they performed the first large-scale study on fear speech across thousands of public WhatsApp groups discussing politics in India. They curated a new data set and tried to characterize fear speech from the database. They observed that users writing fear speech messages use various events and symbols to create the illusion of fear among the readers about a target community. They built models to classify fear speech and observed that the current state of the art NLP, neurolinguistic models, neurolinguistic programming models, do not perform well at this task. fear spread messages tend to spread faster and could potentially go undetected by classifiers built to detect traditional toxic speech due to their low toxic nature. That's interesting. Finally, using a novel methodology to target users with Facebook ads, they conducted a survey among the users of these WhatsApp groups to understand the types of users who consume and share fear speech. They believe that this work opens up a new research question that are very different from tackling hate speech, which the research community has traditionally been involved in. They've made their code and data set public for other researchers. Okay, so basically, it's all. Let's go to conclusion. So basically, there's an Indian election, and there's obviously different groups, polarized to some degree. They were opponents, and there was fear mongering going on within the private WhatsApp groups. I say private, but they were made up of many people who had the same kind of views, and unfortunately, the fear mongering in these groups did cause violence. Okay, I mean, we've got that going on all over the world. I mean, Telegram is another one. There's Telegram groups for this, that, and the other, and basically, they do have a tendency to be one-dimensional. Okay, there's no kind of mediators. They're very much created by people with strong opinions or strong views, and unfortunately, those people are perhaps not the best in terms of being given the power to mediate or to decide on what is fit for public consumption. And so what you get is a lot of people joining these groups to feel that they belong. Some of them have people with very questionable intellectual abilities, etc., etc. And yeah, there's not much analytical thinking going on. There's not much moderate, introspection going on amongst participants. They all think they know what is what, and they're very angry about it. So it is a breeding ground for violence and hate crime in the future. And I mean, there's loads of examples around Europe, around the world, of where this has happened. And it's very dangerous. I mean, lies can be said on social media. Fears things can be said on social media that aren't true. I remember in the UK in 2010, I think it was, we had riots in London, and it was to do with certain criminals being shot dead by the police who were people of color, and it was deemed unfair by a portion of the population. Anyway, the problem was there were lies told on social media during the public outcry. So during the riots, there were lies told about things like, oh, they're rioting in such and such a place. And it was a racially defined thing as well. So unfortunately, there were people saying there were black rioters in, for example, such and such a part of London, and the riots are happening right now. You better get out there, boys, to stop it. So what would happen then is you get a mob motivated to go out, even though said riots weren't even happening. And then this created a kind of hostile atmosphere in the city, because you had these people who were going out and about, often on false premises. And then you had people reacting to that, because, if you're a young kid and you see these adult men going out in opposition to people who are like you, well, you're going to be angry. You might not be able to understand the nuances of it, and you're going to be angry, and you might jump on the bandwagon. You might be easily persuaded if you're around the wrong kind of people, if you're an impressionable person around people that aren't holding you back, if you're around people that are gunning you onwards. So yeah, false claims, fake news, and general the atomization as well of society, how social media is fragmenting us into smaller groups with collectives of people with the same kind of ideology. And it is kind of, I would say, creating new norms of behavior for those people, where people think it's acceptable, socially acceptable to say certain things because they're around those people all the time who agree with them, and they're not tested. And so what happens is you start thinking something is normal, something is okay to do, and then you go out in the big bad world and you'll find it isn't. You'll be in a lot of trouble. Anyway, Brother Marcus says he can't come on at the moment. That's unfortunately. He says he's making dinner. Well, I do hope that's going well. Derapoop, I love your username, Derapoop. Says, fighting Gnosis, do you identify with the horse in your profile picture? Yes, it's a horse running through hell. So that's kind of how I identify life, my life anyway. Is trying to get through hell as best as I can. So yeah, but more or less that's it. Just running through the shitscape of reality, whilst trying to remain strong, and that's it really. Thank you for asking that question. So I'm going to now go to trusty Wikipedia. When all else fails, go to Wikipedia. Depoop said that's what they were thinking it was meant. Oh, that's good. But it is perhaps universally symbolic thing. I'm glad. Not just me. Okay, so when all else fails, we'll go to Wikipedia, Wikipedia has a page about moral panic. Okay, so this is related to fear. Okay, and it's the history of moral panic and hopefully what it is in the modern day, its effects in the modern day. A moral panic, then, is a widespread feeling of fear that some evil person or thing threatens the values, interests, or well-being of a community or society. It is the process of arousing social concern over an issue, usually perpetuated by moral entrepreneurs. That's interesting. Moral entrepreneurs, people who see an opening, a gap in the market that they can exploit by moralizing over certain issues and gaining a following, perhaps, and mass media coverage, and exacerbated by politicians and lawmakers. Moral panic can give rise to new laws aimed at controlling the community. Stanley Cohn, who developed the term, states that moral panic happens when a condition, episode, person, or a group of persons emerges to become defined as a threat to social values and interests. While the issues identified may be real, the claims exaggerate the seriousness, the extent, typicality, and or inevitability of the harm. Okay, moral panics are now studied in sociology and criminology, media studies, and cultural studies. It is often academically considered irrational. Okay, moral panics are considered irrational. Examples of moral panic include the belief in widespread abduction of children by predatory pedophiles, and belief in ritual abuse of women and children by satanic cults. Some moral panics can become embedded in standard political discourse, like the QAnon stuff in present day, Trumpism. And it includes such concepts such as the Red Scare. So that was the McCarthyism, the anti-communist paranoia that was prevalent in America, still is, from early 20th century until now. And also it can include racism, and terrorism. Moral panic differs from mass hysteria, which is closer to a psychological illness rather than a sociological phenomenon. Okay, so you don't have to be a nutter to be involved in moral panic. Okay, history and development. Though the term moral panic was used in 1830 by a religious magazine regarding a sermon, it was used in a way that completely differs from its modern social science application. The phrase was used again in 1831 with an intent that is possibly closer to its modern use. Though not using the term moral panic, Marshall McLuhan, in his 1964 book Understanding Media, articulated the concept academically in describing the effects of media. As a social theory or sociological concept, the concept was first developed in the United Kingdom by Stanley Cohen, who introduced the phrase moral panic in a 1967 to 69 PhD thesis that became the basis for his 1972 book Folk Devils and Moral Panics. In the book, Cohen describes the reaction amongst the British public to the rivalry between the mod and the rocker youth subcultures of the 1960s and 1970s. Okay. Cohen's initial development of the concept was for the purpose of analyzing the definition of and social reaction to these subcultures as a social problem. According to Cohen, a moral panic occurs when a condition, episode, person, or group of persons emerges to become defined as a threat to social values and interests. To Cohen, those who start the panic after fearing a threat to prevailing social or cultural values are moral entrepreneurs, while those who supposedly threaten social order have been described as folk devils. Okay. Not sure if devil is a nice word to use, but sometimes it's good to threaten social order when social order is bad. In early 1990s, Eric Good and Nachman Ben Yehuda produced an attributional model that placed more emphasis on strict definition than cultural processes. The differences in the British and American definitions, many sociologists have pointed out the differences between the definitions of a moral panic as described by American versus British sociologists. Kenneth Thompson claimed that American sociologists tended to emphasize psychological factors, while the British portrayed moral panics as a crisis of capitalism. Bloody leftists in Britain, eh? Anyway, British criminologist Jack Young used the term in his participant observation study of drug consumption in Porthmadog in Wales between 1967 and 1969. Okay, in Policing the Crisis, Mugging the State and the Law and Order in 1978. Marxist Stuart Hall and his colleagues studied the public reaction to the phenomenon of mugging and the perception that it had recently been imported from American culture into the UK. Employing Cohen's definition of moral panic, Hall and colleagues theorized that the rising crime rate equation performs an ideological function relating to social control. Crime statistics, in Hall's view, are often manipulated for political and economic purposes. Moral panics could thereby be ignited to create public support for the need to police the crisis. Okay. Cohen's model of moral panic. First to name the phenomenon, Stanley Cohen investigated a series of moral panics in his book. Yes, we read along that. We've read about that already. In a moral panic, Cohen says the untypical is made typical. Okay, that makes sense. So in a moral panic, something that isn't typically the case is made seem like it is apparently typically the case. Cohen's initial of the concept was for the purpose of analyzing the definition of social reaction to these subcultures as a social problem. He was interested in demonstrating how agents of control amplified in that they potentially damaged the identities of those labeled as deviant and induced them to embrace deviant identities and behavior. That's interesting. According to Cohen, these groups were being outside the central core values of consensual society and as posing a threat to both the values of society and society itself, hence the term folk devils. Setting out to test his hypothesis on rockers, Cohen ended up in a rather different place. He discovered a pattern of action and reaction with a greater foot than mods and rockers, the moral panic. He thereby identified 5 sequential stages of moral panic, characterizing the reactions to the mod and rocker conflict. He identified 4 key agents in moral panics. First of all, the 4 key agents are mass media, moral entrepreneurs, the culture of social control, and Joe Public. Okay. In a more recent edition of Folk Devils and Moral Panics, Cohen suggested the term panic in itself connotes irrationality and a lack of control. Cohen maintained that panic is a suitable term when used as an extended metaphor. Okay, Cohen's stages of moral panic, setting out to test his hypothesis on mods and rockers. Cohen discovered a pattern of construction and reaction with greater foothold than mods and rockers. Okay, according to Cohen, there are 5 sequential stages in the construction of a moral panic: an event, condition, episode, person, or a group of persons is perceived and defined as a threat to societal values, safety, and interests. Okay. Number 2, the nature of these apparent threats are amplified by the mass media, who present the supposed threat through simplistic symbolic rhetoric. Such portrayals appeal to public prejudices, creating an evil in need of social control. Folk devils and victims, the moral majority. Okay, so the majority are seen as victims, helpless victims, people who need to be saved from the minority, the folk devils. Okay, a sense of social anxiety, okay, and concern among the public is aroused through these symbolic representations of the threat. The gatekeepers of morality, media editors, religious leaders, politicians, and other moral thinking people respond to the threat with socially accredited experts pronouncing their diagnoses and solutions to the threat. This includes perhaps new laws or policies. Okay, the condition then disappears, submerges, or deteriorates and becomes more visible. Okay. Cohen observed further, sometimes the object of the panic is quite novel. Okay. And at other times, it is something which has been in existence long enough, but suddenly appears in the limelight. Okay. Sometimes the panic passes over and is forgotten except in folklore and collective memory. At other times, it has a more serious and long-lasting repercussion and might produce such changes as those in the legal and social policy, or even in the way society conceives itself. Okay, agents of moral panic. Characterizing the reactions to the mod and rocker conflict, Cohen identified 4 key agents in moral panics: mass media, moral entrepreneurs, the culture of society control, of social control, and the public. So media as an agent of moral panic, especially key in the early stage of social reaction, producing processed or coded images of deviants and the deviants. This involves 3 processes. Number 1, exaggeration and distortion of who did or who said what. Okay. Now, why is that? I suppose it's probably going to sell the news, isn't it? As I said, fear sells, sex sells, fear sells. Okay. If something is exaggerated, if it's distorted, if it's unusual, it's going to grab people's attention. So it may well be sometimes it's not for nefarious reasons that the media are doing this. They're literally trying to pick up a story because it's unusual, and that is marketable, that will sell, but it has the unfortunate side effect of setting off a moral panic. But also it could be due to the leanings of said media, whether it's right or left wing, what their biases are, what they're opposed to, and that is the more likely reason why they are choosing to publish distorted, exaggerated, atypical stories. Anyway, prediction: the dire consequences of failure to act. Okay, and then number 3. So they will the media will exaggerate, will present a distorted version of what is occurring. Then they will present a prediction. Okay, so basically, if you don't stop this, okay, shit will hit the fan. It will be the apocalypse. Okay, that's generally the kind of synopsis. And then the symbolization. Okay, so basically signifying a person, a word, or a thing as a threat. So, you know, it could be anything. It could be immigrants. It could be, you know, it could be homeless people. It could be men. It could be LGBTQ plus people, transgender people. It could be teenagers. It could be pick any group that the media is opposed to. Anyway, moral entrepreneurs are individuals and groups who target deviant behavior. Now you have to ask why. The point is, there's a good living to be made off it. One has to remember there's a money in the game. You know, Tommy Robinson, Nigel Farage, they've made a living of targeting others. And I'm not saying that Tommy Robinson has always been wrong. He hasn't, in my view. But you know, there's examples of moral entrepreneurs, people who make a living out of it. I'm not saying they're all doing it. I'm not cynical about all of them. I'm not saying they're all liars. Some of them might have got into it, you know, at first, not for the money, but for the actual moral issue. But it just so happens that, you know, they were supported by other people and it became their income. And because they're good at it, they were encouraged to keep it up. That might be the case. But in other cases, I'm sure there are people who jump on the bandwagon, the moralizing bandwagon, for the power, for the money. I would say Nigel Farage is a good example of that. Societal control culture. This comprises those with institutional power, such as the police, the courts, and the local and national politicians. They are made aware of the nature and extent of the threat. Concern is passed up the chain of command to the national level, where control measures are instituted. Okay, and then the fourth agent of moral panic is the public, Mr. Joe Public himself, and herself. These include individuals and groups. They have to decide who and what to believe. In the modern rocket case, the public initially distrusted media messages, but ultimately believe them. And why is that? In the paper earlier, we learned that something is repeated again and again. And if something becomes familiar with us, it is more likely to seep into our, you know, subconsciousness and become information that is brought to the fore of our mind when we meet us or are confronted by a certain state of affairs. So when something is repeated again and again to us, it can seem to become part of what we believe is true, whether we like it or not. It's something to be aware of. Maybe if you're not aware of that fact, okay, and maybe if you're not media savvy or intellectually endowed, or you haven't been taught to be analytical about matters, maybe in these circumstances you are in danger of being somebody who believes things just because they're said repetitively to you or presented to you repetitively to you. You don't question beyond the superficial utterances that are made to you. Mass media, the concept of moral panic has also been linked to certain assumptions about mass media. In recent times, the mass media have become important players in the dissemination of moral indignation. Moral indignation, even when they do not appear to be consciously engaged in sensationalism or muckraking. Simply reporting a subset of factual statements without contextual nuance can be enough to generate concern, anxiety, or panic. Yes. Cohn stated that the mass media is the primary source of the public's knowledge about deviance and social problems. He further argued that moral panic gives rise to the folk devil by labeling actions and people Christian Jopp furthers the importance of media as he notes shifts in public attention can trigger the decline of movements and the rise of others. Okay, according to Cohn, the media appear in any of all three roles in moral panic dramas. So they can set the initial agenda, okay, selecting of deviants or socially problematic events deemed as newsworthy, and then using finer filters, select which events are candidates for moral panic. Okay, transmitting the images, transmitting the claims by using the rhetoric of moral panic. So they can give a stage to the moral entrepreneurs. They can give a stage to the people who seek to sensationalize matters. They can give a platform to people. Okay, they can be the conduit to the public for the moral panic. Breaking the silence and making the claim. Good and Ben Yehuda's attributional model in their 1994 book Moral Panics, The Social Construction of Deviance, Enric Good and Nachman Ben Yehuda take a social constructionist approach to moral panics, okay, challenging the assumption that sociology is able to define, measure, explain, and ameliorate social problems. Reviewing empirical studies in the social constructionist perspective, Good and Ben Yehuda produced an attributional model that identifies essential characteristics and placed more emphasis on strict definition than cultural processes. They arrived at 5 defining elements or criteria of a moral panic. First of all, concern. Okay, there is a heightened level of concern over the behavior of a certain group or category and its consequences. In other words, there is the belief that the behavior of the group or activity deemed deviant is likely to have a negative effect on society. Concern can be indicated via opinion polls, media coverage, and lobbying activity. Number 2, hostility. There is an increased level of hostility towards deviants who are collectively designated as the enemy or an enemy of respectable society, whatever that is. These deviants are constructed as folk devils, and a clear division forms between them and us. Consensus. There must be at least a certain minimal measure of consensus across society as a whole, or at least designated segments of that. Okay, and this is even more applicable nowadays, as I was saying earlier, in our atomized society, in the way we're consuming media in fragmented portions of society, and even in our small little segments. Okay, we can have like moral panic, okay, in our little bubble about something that, on the whole, outside of our community or outside of the the ideologies that we share, there isn't a moral panic. Okay. Anyway, so there must be at least certain minimal measures of consensus across society as a whole, or at least designated segments of it, that the threat is real, serious, and caused by the wrongdoing group members and their behavior. This is to say, though concern does not have to be nationwide, there must be widespread acceptance that the group in question poses a very real threat to society. It is important at this stage that the moral entrepreneurs are vocal and folk devils appear weak and disorganized. Okay, so there's a little bit of yes. Okay, so at this stage, there is something about strength, and it's like in the consensus building stage, moral entrepreneurs are seen as strong, seen as somebody to look up to, full of vitality, and the folk devils are seen as disgusting, weak, disorganized, degenerate, and to be avoided, not to be encouraged. Okay. Disproportionality. Okay. Public concern is in excess of what is appropriate if concern were directly proportional to objective harm. Okay. More simply, the action taken is proportionate to the actual threat posed by the accused group. Okay. That's what's happening in moral panic. So the action being encouraged, the action taken is disproportionate okay, is not it's not on an equal footing to the actual threat posed by the accused group. Okay. According to Good and Ben Yehuda, the concept of moral panic rests on disproportion. As such, statistics are exaggerated or fabricated, and the existence of other equally or more harmful activity is denied. And number 5, this is what Good and Ben Yehuda produced in the attributional model. Okay, they said these are the essential characteristics that define elements of a moral panic. Okay, and the 5th essential element is volatility. Moral panics are highly volatile and tend to disappear as quickly as they appeared, because public interest wanes or news reports change to another narrative. That's interesting. That's the American view. Good and Ben Yehuda. Good and Ben Yehuda also examined 3 competing explanations of moral panics. The grassroots model, the source of the panic is identified as widespread anxieties about real or imagined threats. The elite engineered model, okay, an elite group induces or engineers a panic over an issue that they know to be exaggerated in order to move attention away from their own lack of solving social problems. Yes, that's very, very prevalent, unfortunately. The interest group theory, the middle rungs of power and status are where moral issues are most significantly felt. So going back to the volatility, so moral panics are highly volatile and tend to disappear as quickly as they appeared. This is true because, the powers that be will always pick that which favors their agenda, and that which favors their agenda is choosing something for you to focus on, so that you're not focusing on them, so you're not thinking about what they're doing wrong. So if something else crops up, okay, they'll always pick the best alternative. If they're talking about COVID, well, then something else might crop up. COVID might be cured. They'll have to pick something else. They're going to pick immigration. Immigration isn't working, so they'll pick something else. As and when it arises. Sorry, not that it's not working, but they'll make the best of a bad situation. So if something happens, say if some nutter shoots up a school or there's some terrorist explosion or whatever, they will make the most of it. And that will become the central focus of a new moral panic until its effects dissipate and until it can be replaced by something more immediate. I think the key here is immediacy. The powers that be, the elites, the men with the money, the tyrants of this world, they want something that's happening in the immediacy, something that's happening presently for you, because that's what you're going to focus on. You're going to focus on what's happening now. And if something is if they can say something is happening now, and that something is going to endanger you or your family, well, that's going to be what you're going to focus on, and because it's an unusual occurrence. This is a thing. It's going to be an unusual thing. It's going to be strange. It's going to be atypical. Okay. But they're going to pump it up, right? And because of its novelty, perhaps you'll look at it because you'll be trying to learn it, because it's a natural human thing to be inquisitive, especially when the media is telling you something is fucking endangering you. Okay, your ears are going to perk up at it. You're going to be thinking, well, what's going on? And you're going to be looking, is this something I should be thinking about? Is this something I should be worried about? Okay, and whilst you're doing that, they're busy fucking you up and taking something from you in some other area of your life. They're busy removing some of your rights. They might be busy trying to implement new laws. They might be busy trying to get away with all manner of skullduggery, whilst you're focusing on the new moral panic. Okay. Similarly, writing about the Blue Whale Challenge and the Momo Challenge. Okay, the Momo Challenge, I think I remember that. That was a hoax and an internet urban legend that rumored to spread through social media and other outlets. It reported that children and adolescents were being harassed by a user named Momo to perform a series of dangerous tasks. Yes. I remember that. As examples of moral panics, Benjamin Radford listed themes that he commonly observed in modern versions of these phenomena: hidden dangers of modern technology, an evil stranger manipulating the innocent, the bogeyman, and a hidden world of anonymous evil people, QAnon, Pizzagate, all this type of shit. The Illuminati, yeah. Topic clusters. In over 40 years of extensive study, researchers have identified several general clusters of topics that help describe the way in which moral panics operate and the impact they have. Some of the more common clusters identified are child abuse, drugs and alcohol, immigration, media technologies, and street crime. Okay, exceptional cases of physical or sexual abuse against children have driven policies based on child protection, regardless of their frequency or contradicting evidence from experts. While discoveries about paedophilia in the priesthood and among celebrities has somewhat altered the original notion of paedophiles being complete strangers, their presence in and around the family is hardly acknowledged. Okay, so this is something to be aware of, that I suppose these types of predators are all around, and they could be in your local neighborhood. They may not be celebrities. It's not just the powerful that are unfortunately this way inclined. It could be your local priest, your local scout leader, the football coach, the man next door, the woman next door, the man on the bus, etc. So it is dangerous to think that it's just the elites who are up to this type of shit. When we live in a very dangerous world, just remember that. Unfortunately, but yeah, children, I suppose, are the innocent victims of this world, and we do want to protect children. Obviously, we don't want harm to come to children, to our loved ones, our children, our nieces and nephews, our siblings. And I suppose they are seen as lambs, and that's why they're probably the easiest kind of form of creating or basis for creating a moral panic. If you can say someone is coming for the kids, well, that's going to create lots of noise, and it's going to create lots of panic, And we remember we all heard stories about, there's a man in a white van going around picking up kids. Half the time in a town or the city, half the time some sicko made it up, like as a kind of Chinese whisper thing, see what would happen. And there are many urban myths, etc., that go around that aren't true. I don't know why people put these out. I mean, this isn't just something that happens in the media. There are sick liars out there who do make up lies just for their own kind of gratification, self-gratification, just because they like being mischievous, and sadistically so. They like to be mischievous about things that you shouldn't really fucking joke about. You know what I mean? That does go on, unfortunately, in this decrepit species of ours. Anyway, alcohol and other drugs. Substances used for pleasure, such as alcohol and other drugs, are popularly subject to legal action and criminalization due to their alleged harms to the health of those who partake in them, or in general order on the streets. Recent examples include meth and designer drugs. I mean, Trump speaks a lot about fentanyl, as if everybody in America is taking fentanyl. I know it's a problem, but he pumps up to seeing that everybody is on it, and it's the reason why America is going down the tubes, or was going down the tubes with Biden, when Biden was in charge. Hello to Apuleius. How do you say it?
Apuleius.
Apuleius.
Yeah.
How doing?
Well, he died after Seneca and Marcus Aurelius. Well, he was born after Marcus Aurelius. I don't know if he died after Marcus Aurelius.
Is this brother Tyler in the house?
Yeah, it's Tyler.
All right, Tyler. Good to have you with us. I'll just finish reading this, and then we'll bring you in. I think. Wow, this is quite a long one, guys. Do you want me to keep reading it?
Yeah. Read all this Marxist forgiveness, please, and forgive me again. And I recant of asking you to forgive me, and I'm never forgiven.
I forgive you for whatever it is you want to be forgiven for, even though I don't hold
Forgive me
anything
for
against you.
reading
Never have.
Marx.
Okay. Media technologies. The advent of new media communication produces anxieties among those who deem themselves as protectors of childhood and culture. Okay. Yeah, so there we go. These fears are often based on a lack of knowledge as to the actual capacities or usage of the medium. Moralizing organizations such as those motivated by religion commonly advocate censorship while parents remain concerned. Okay. According to media studies professor Kirsten Dropner, every time a new mass medium has entered the social scene, it has spurred public debates on social and cultural norms, debates that serve to reflect, negotiate, and possibly revise these very norms. In some cases, debate of a new medium brings about, indeed, changes into heated emotional reactions, what may be defined as media panic. There's another term, media panic. Recent manifestations of this kind of development include cyberbullying, bullying, and sexting. Yeah, I mean, those are legitimate problems in my view. I mean, cyberbullying is fucking everywhere, as is sexting. Apparently, receiving unwanted dick pics in your inbox is apparently a huge problem for women. Anyway, street crime, a central concern of modern mass media, has been interpersonal crime. Hello to Noodles.
Hello, hello.
Hello, brother. How are you doing?
The iatrist, the iatrist geneticist, or the iatro geneticist. Or
Noodles is showing off his cuisine. Noodles, you have to come and I work in a vegan restaurant with me or a vegan cafe one day. We'll open one up.
Yeah, we're just closing them all down because they're $30 meals.
Omelet.
Sorry?
That's a vegan omelet.
Lovely. Can I ask what you use for the eggs?
Just egg.
Just egg. It's a box, is it? Is it a carton?
Yeah, it's made of mung beans.
Okay, because I've heard about using you know the liquid you get with chickpeas, not the salted water. I forget what you call it, but you know the
aqua fab.
Yeah. You can whisk that up apparently.
No, this just egg is so good, man. If you know how to do it right.
Okay.
Do you really want to slapbox me, Nick? I mean, Noodles.
What?
Do you really want to slapbox Tyler? Would you slapbox me? Would you slapbox me if we got arrested?
I'm not interested.
For protesting?
Tyler, we have to keep reading, I'm afraid. Now, do you want to take over the reading, Noodle?
Sure.
Now, how are we going to do this? Because can I share the link in the chat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you present it and you take over, because I'm sharing the link. There you go. It's in chat now, so you should be able to find it.
You want to be able to step away and not have to scroll.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to go and make a cup of red bush tea, if that's all right. But if you can get down,
Deets, come up here, Deets.
Oh, private chat, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's exemplary natalists that like to.
There you go.
All right. So where am I reading from?
All right. Let me just. You're going down to. 1 second now. So.
Oh, cool! There's a part about mods and rockers. That's awesome.
Yeah, we've already done that. We've already done that.
Jaeger bombs.
We've already done that.
Bombs.
Where are you on it now? So you get down to the bit where it talks about Good and Ben Yehuda's attributional model, yeah?
Okay.
And then topic clusters.
Wait, Good and hold on, let me do the find thing. Good. Oh, here.
Oh, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to share a sentence.
I got it. Topic clusters. I got it.
We've done child abuse. We've done alcohol. We're on immigration now.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm going to share your screen. So let me know when you want me to share it.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
Should we donate? Serious question.
No.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah, you can share it now.
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah. So immigration, a series of moral panic. A series of moral panic is likely to occur whenever humans migrate to a foreign location to live alongside the native or indigenous population, particularly if the newcomers are of a different skin color or religion. These immigrants may be accused of bringing alien cultures and refusing to integrate with the mainstream culture, putting strain on welfare, education, and housing systems, and excessive involvement in crime. Media technologies. The advent of any new medium of communication produces anxieties among those who deem themselves as protectors of childhood and culture. Their fears are often based on a lack of knowledge as to the actual capacities or usage of the medium. Moralizing organizations such as those motivated by religion commonly advocate censorship while parents remain concerned. According to media studies professor Kirsten Drotner, every time a new mass medium has entered the social scene, it has spurred public debates on social and cultural norms, debates that serve to reflect, negotiate, and possibly revise these very norms. In some cases, debate of a new medium brings about, indeed, changes into heated emotional reactions, what may be defined as a media panic. Recent manifestations of this kind of development include cyberbullying and sexting. Street crime. A central concern of modern mass media has been interpersonal crime. When new types of patterns of crime emerge, coverage expands considerably, especially when said crime involves increased violence or the use of weapons, sustaining the idea that crime is out of control. This keeps prevalent the fear of being randomly attacked on the street by violent young men. Examples. Researchers have considered a number of historical and current events to meet the criteria set out by Stanley Cohen. Historic examples. Nativist movement and the Know Nothing Party, 1840s to 1860s. The brief success of the Know Nothing Party in the US during the 1850s can be understood as resulting from a moral panic over Irish Catholic immigration dating back to the 1840s, particularly as it related to religion, politics, and jobs. Nativist criticism of immigrants from Catholic nations centered upon the control of the Pope over church members. The concern regarding the social threat led the Know Nothing Party in the 1856 presidential election to win 21.5% of the vote. The quick decline in political success for the Know Nothing Party as a result of a decline in concern for the perceived social threat is an indicative feature of the movements situated in moral panic. Tyler, do you want to continue reading?
No, I can't. I can't see any of that.
Okay.
It's like
All right.
on my cell phone.
I'll read the Red Scare. But if someone wants,
Okay.
Ian doesn't take over after that because I want to eat a little bit. So Red Scare, which is 1919 to 1920, and then late 40s to the 50s. During the years 1919 to 1920, followed by the late 1940s to the 1950s, the United States had a moral panic over communism and feared being attacked by the Soviet Union. In the late 1940s and the 1950s, a period now known as the McCarthy era, Senator Joseph McCarthy used his power as a senator to conduct a witch hunt for communists he claimed had infiltrated all levels of American society. including Hollywood, the State Department, and the Armed Forces. Including Hollywood, the State Department, and the Armed Forces. When he began, he held little influence or respect within the Senate, but he exploited Americans' fear of communism and Congress' desire to not lose re-election to rise to the prominence and keep the hunt going in spite of an increasingly apparent lack of evidence, often accusing those who dared oppose him of being communists themselves. You know, I know I definitely know communists that are in the military, and actually my grandmother was would go to communist rallies, and the FBI showed up at their house. My dad said he remembers when he was a little kid, my grandfather answering the door to the FBI, and yeah, I said that was, that was kind of scary.
That is scary. All right. Do you want me to read now, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, then there's the Devil's Music. That was another moral panic. Over the years, there's been concern of various types of new music causing spiritual or otherwise moral corruption to younger generations, often called the Devil's Music. While the types of music popularly labeled as such has changed with time, along with the intended meaning of the term, this basic factor of the moral panic has remained constant. It could thus be argued that this is really a series of smaller moral panics that fall under a large umbrella. While most notable in the United States, other countries such as Romania have seen exposure to or promotion of the idea as well. Blues was one of the first music genres to receive this label, mainly due to the perception that it incited violence. Holy crap. Fucking it incited violence, blues music, really? And other poor behavior. In the early 20th century, the blues was considered disreputable, especially as white audiences began listening to the blues during the 1920s. Jazz was another early receiver of the label. I mean, it's interesting, they're both black, they were kind of music from black people originally. At the time, traditionalists considered jazz to contribute to the breakdown of morality. Despite the veiled attacks on blues and jazz as Negro music, often going hand in hand with other attacks on the genres, urban middle-class African Americans perceived jazz as devil's music too, and agreed with the beliefs that jazz's improvised rhythms and sounds were promoting promiscuity. Some have speculated that the rock phase of the panic in the 1970s and 1980s contributed to the popularity of the satanic ritual abuse alleged moral panic in the 1980s. Okay, so they were saying that these celebrities were involved and all that type of crap.
If only they knew what was to come with
If only they knew about Jeffrey Epstein, they might think that they were right.
If only they knew about metal music.
All right, yeah. Comic books. Your phone. Comic books in the United States, substantial limits were placed on comic book content during the 1950s, especially in horror and crime genres. This moral panic was promoted by the psychologist Frederick Vertum, who claimed that comics were a major source of juvenile delinquency, arguing in his book Seduction of the Innocent that they predisposed children to violence. Comic books appeared in congressional hearings and organizations promoted book burnings. Vertum's work resulted in the creation of the Comics Code, which drastically limited what kind of content could be published. As a result of these limitations, many comic publishers and illustrators were forced to leave the profession, and the content produced by those that remained became tamer and more focused on superheroes. During the following decades, the Comics Code was losing in scope before finally being abolished in 2011. Switchblades. Okay, so there was another moral panic about switchblades. The toy that kills. Okay. I'm not going to read that. Mods and rockers, we've already done that. Dungeons and Dragons. At various times, Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop role-playing games have been accused of promoting such practices as Satanism, witchcraft, suicide, pornography, and murder. In the 1980s and later, some groups, especially fundamentalist Christian groups, accused the games of encouraging interest in sorcery and the veneration of demons. HIV and AIDS. Okay, there was a moral panic about that apparently in the 80s. The moral panic was created within the media over HIV. Okay, for example, in Britain, a prominent advertisement by the government suggested that the public was uninformed about HIV due to a lack of publicly accessible and accurate information. The media outlets nicknamed HIV the gay plague, which further stigmatized the disease. However, scientists gained a far better understanding of HIV as it grew in the 1980s and moved into the 1990s and beyond. The illness was still negatively viewed by many as either being caused by or passed on through the gay community. Once it became clear that this was not the case, the moral panic created by the media changed to blaming the overall negligence of ethical standards by the younger generation, both male and female, resulting in another moral panic. Authors behind AIDS, Rights, Risk and Reason argued that British TV and press coverage is locked into an agenda which blocks out any approach to the subject which does not conform in advance to the values and language of profoundly homophobic culture at the time. A culture that did not regard gay men as fully or properly human. No distinction obtains for the agenda between quality and between popular and serious. Reports among gay Southern California ST, which suggested that a agent, theological agent,
16 psychopaths get created
to homosexuality,
McDonald's
disease, including
this month, March
Just 1 second. I can't
2025.
understand you, brother. Hello to you.
NOWI.
Susie, you can come if you want. There's dangerous dogs, panic, ongoing examples, increasing crime. So 1970s until present, this has been an ongoing sort of moral panic. Fear of increasing crime rates is often the cause of moral panics. In fact, there are many types of crime that declined by 50% or more, beginning in the late 1980s, early 1990s. In Europe, crime statistics show this is part of a broader pattern of crime decline since the late Middle Ages, with a reversal from the 1960s to 1980s and the 1990s before the decline continued. Okay, the phenomenon which often taps into a population's herd mentality continues to occur in various cultures. In some cases, the perception of increased crime can be caused by increased reporting of crime or by better record keeping. Okay, Japanese jurist Koichi Hamai explains how the changes in crime recording in Japan since the 1990s caused people to believe that the crime rate was rising and that crimes were getting increasingly severe. Yeah, this is the problem, because people can say, oh, you know, rape conviction rates are going up, therefore there's more rapes, or there's more rapes, arrests, therefore there's more rapes, but it may not be the case. It may be just that there's more reports of the crime, you know. Maybe it's stayed the same. Maybe it's the rate of rape is the same. It's just that people are reporting it more because they feel safer doing so, or there's easier ways of reporting it now.
Antibiotics.
Violence and video games. Okay, we won't go into that. It's going to be like the comics. War on drugs, 1970s to present. This is an ongoing moral panic. Some critics have pointed to the moral panic as an explanation for the war on drugs. For example, a Royal Society of Arts Commission concluded that the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971 is driven more by moral panic than by practical desire to reduce harm. Okay, some have written that one of the many rungs supporting moral panic behind the war on drugs was a separate but related moral panic, which peaked in the late 1990s, involving media's gross exaggeration of the frequency of surreptitious use of date rape drugs. News media have been criticized for advocating grossly excessive protective measures for women, particularly in coverage between 1996 and 1998, for overstating the threat and for excessively dwelling on the topic. For example, a 2009 Australian study found that drug panel tests were unable to detect any drug in any of the 97 instances of patients admitted to hospital, believing their drinks might have been spiked. Sex offenders, child abuse, paedophilia. Yeah, we've read about that earlier. This is an ongoing thing. It's clear why it is a moral panic, because children are innocent and precious to us, so we would always be worried about them. Then the satanic panic. These are the contemporary examples. Okay, human trafficking. Yes, human trafficking. So many critics of contemporary anti-prostitution activism argue that much of the current concern about human trafficking and its more general conflation with prostitution, other forms of sex works, have hallmarks of moral panic. They further argue that this moral panic shares much in common with the white slavery panic of a century earlier, which in the US prompted passage of the 1910 Mann Act. Nick Davies argues that the following major factors contributed towards the effect. Since the collapse of communism, Western Europe was flooded with sex workers from Eastern Europe, and the term sex trafficking came to mean any organized movement of sex workers, losing the connotation of force and coercion. This change of the definition entered, for example, into the UK Sexual Offences Act in 2003. Second, academic researchers on sex trade provided a range of estimates of the trafficked persons, including estimates based on various assumptions up to the very pessimistic ones. The media picked the most alarmist numbers, which were uncritically used by politicians who in their turn were quoted for further misleading information. Okay. Terrorism and Islamic extremism. Yep, we've already talked about terrorism. African gangs and moral panic. QAnon conspiracies, LGBT grooming conspiracies. Yes. Okay, so now we're coming to a criticism of moral panic as an explanation. Okay, hello to pseudo history. Paul Joss has argued that while classic moral panic theory styled itself as being part of the skeptical revolution that sought to critique structural functionalism, is actually very similar to Emile Durkheim's depiction of how collective conscience is strengthened through its reactions to deviance. In Cohen's case, for example, right thinkers use folk devils to strengthen societal orthodoxies. In his analysis of Donald Trump's victory in the 2016 United States presidential election, Juice reimagined moral panic in Weberian terms, showing how charismatic moral entrepreneurs can at once deride folk devils in the traditional sense, while avoiding the conservative moral recapitulation that classic moral panic theory predicts. Other criticism is that of disproportionality. There is no way to measure what a proportionate reaction should be to a specific action. Writing in 1995 about moral panic that arose in UK after a series of murders by juveniles, chiefly of 2-year-old James Bolger by 10-year-old boys, but also including that of 70-year-old Edna Phillips by 2 17-year-old girls, the sociologist Colin Hay pointed out that the folk devil was ambiguous in such cases. The child perpetrators would normally be thought of as innocent. That's interesting. In 1995, Angela McRobbie and Sarah Thornton argued that it is now time that every stage in the process of constructing a moral panic, as well as the social relations which support it should be revised. Their argument is that mass media has changed since the concept of moral panic emerged, so that folk devils are less marginalized than they once were, and that folk devils are not only castigated by mass media, but supported and defended by it as well. They also suggest that the points of social control that moral panics used to rest on have undergone some degree of shift, if not transformation. I mean, I would have a tendency to agree with these two ladies. They do seem to keep to give other sides to the story. So, for example, in immigration, they might say, "Oh, the Muslims are causing loads of problems, blah 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 blah. They're eroding our culture, and they don't have the same values as us. They cause all manner of problems." Then they'll give a voice to them as well. And in my view, what it does is it keeps the topic on the agenda. It keeps because obviously it's always going to be a volatile issue. It's a polarizing issue. And what it does is it creates more sparks, more fanfare, I dare say it, more entertainment sometimes for the masses to consume, and it keeps them, keeps them consuming the media, keeps them watching the news, it keeps them, having emotive responses to the YouTube videos, etc., etc. Keeps them engaged, keeps them focused, keeps them in a state of moral panic, I suppose. And who knows what the powers that be are doing when the masses are entrenched in moral panic.
Yeah,
I would like to.
We saw that with the State of the Union address.
Go on, tell me a bit about that. I'm just going to have a little few mouthfuls of food while you talk. And Bastian, please introduce yourself and say hello. I know who you are, but just please say hello and say what you think so far of moral panic or fear in the media, fear in politics, and how it's used.
Hello, everyone.
Noodles first, and then Bastian. Noodles first, then Bastian.
Okay, no worries.
Well, just because you were saying like how like the media keeps people hooked on the moral panic or whatever the issue is that they're like driving, they're kind of using it to drive views. And like, I mean, I think what we saw with like the State of the Union address is that it's all just reality TV now, with like the presidency and the stuff that he says. Like, we kind of all knew that it was going to be like that it was going to be ridiculous. We knew he was going to tell a bunch of lies and that we'd all get pissed off at it. We knew there would be people in the audience like booing, and there would be like it would just be like this very kind of dramatic thing where everybody would, it was just entertainment. Like I feel like less people tuned in to watch it to actually understand what's going to go on, because I think everybody knows either, like, if there's people that really believe in Trump and think he's a good person, they're just assuming he's doing something good and it's all for the right reasons. And then everybody else, which is probably most people, even people who voted for him, probably know that it's just going to be a load of bullshit. Obviously, he's going to say some crazy shit. He's going to lie. And probably a lot of other presidents do that shit too. And yeah, and it's just something for everybody to be like, how despicable, how awful is it that this person is saying these things and doing these things. And I don't know, it's hard to take it all seriously now.
Okay, Bastian, brother, do you want to say something?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Yes. Yeah, so about like the moral panics and narratives, I essentially kind of agree with what Noodles was saying, just before me. Yeah, I think that, but how I interpret the moral panics and like these diversions is just that they're distractions from actual issues that we could be addressing, I don't want to get all like, into my personal beliefs, but like my true belief is that, that there are power structures that make up these narratives, and they try to distract us from actual pressing issues, which I think is like, consumerism, economic problems, extreme technological advancements, stuff like that. Maybe the environment, So like, yeah, like I think that all of these narratives are manufactured to like, like wokeness, anti-wokeness, stuff like that. like, you know, like racial issues, you know, which all go in hand, you know, like, you know, crime. I think all of that is just a distraction from like real, actual heart of the matter issues, you know. Yeah.
I would agree with you. We've got Seb here. Seb, do you want to say something about fear in the media and politics and in power, and how the power imposed fear on us?
Oh, of course they impose fear. They're trying to divide and conquer us. They're trying to make us, you know, we are, you know, like they're trying to pin each other as our worst enemies, you know, like the guy down the street is my worst enemy, you know. They're trying to make us like that, when in actuality he could be, but a far greater enemy is the people who make these manufactured ideas and narratives, which lead to moral panic, fear, and division. Right. That's what I believe in, genuinely, truly believe in, you know.
I agree with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Bastian. Seb, did you have something to say, brother?
What was the question? Are we going?
We're talking about fear, how fear is used in the media, what it does to society. We're talking about moral panics, and just how it seems sometimes that the powers that be project kind of distorted versions of the truth. Maybe they zone in on particular areas whilst distracting us from others.
So a lot of people talk about there being a certain type of psyops that is going on, and I think that's the case, but it's not this dramatic thing where like the people are dressed up in suits and stuff like that. People just want to make money and advertise for things, and people are generally self-centered, and they want and they want to shape people's beliefs in a way that is like profitable for them. Like a lot of companies, I'm sure the CEO doesn't. They might actually care about like a lot of social issues or a lot of other issues that's going on, but 50 years ago they didn't seem to care about that. So it seems like there's a pattern where all these companies is just trying to placate to the public. Like the CEO of Coca-Cola, does the CEO of Coca-Cola really care about like the pride movement all of a sudden? Just no, or maybe the person does that, but then why now? That seems to, yeah. Why would they do the rainbow
Okay.
stuff now? Right?
Thank you for that, Seb.
Trying to manipulate the masses, and there is a line where the manipulation is benevolent, right? I guess even if they have a selfish reason for what they are doing.
Okay, Seb, I better keep reading. British criminologist Yvonne Jukes has also raised issue with the term morality in regards to moral panics and how it is accepted unproblematically in the concept of moral panic, and how most research into moral panics fails to approach the term critically but instead accepts it at face value. Jukes goes on to argue that the thesis and the way it has been used fails to distinguish between crimes that quite rightly offend human morality and thus elicit a justifiable reaction, and those that unduly demonize minorities. The public are not sufficiently gullible to keep accepting the latter and consequently allow themselves to be manipulated by the media and the government. That's according to Yvonne. I don't know if she's right. Another British criminologist, Stephen Hall, goes a step further and suggests that the term moral panic is a fundamental category error. Okay, Hall argues that although some crimes are sensationalized by the media, in the general structure of the crime control narrative, the ability of the existing state and criminal justice system to protect the public is overstated. Yes, public concern is whipped up only for the purpose of being soothed, which produces not panic, but the opposite, comfort and complacency. Echoing another point Hall makes, the sociologists Thompson and Williams in 2013 argued that the concept of moral panic is not a rational response to the phenomenon of social reaction, but itself is a product of the irrational middle-class fear of the imagined working-class mob. Using as an example a peaceful and lawful protest staged by local mothers against the rehousing of sex offenders on their estate, Thompson and Williams argue that the sensationalist demonization of the protesters by the moral panic theorists and the liberal press was just as irrational as the demonization of the sex offenders by the protesters and the tabloid press. Many sociologists and criminologists have revised Cohn's original framework. The revisions are compatible with the way in which Cohn theorized panics in the third introduction to Folk Devils and Moral Panics. Okay, so that's the end of that Wikipedia page. So that's that. As I said, guys, if you find anything interesting on the topics we're discussing, do feel free to share it, whether it's like PDFs, an article, or a video. But I suppose we can loosen up a little bit now and just talk about fear, what it's doing in the world, in media, and where it's going. I personally think, like, you won't get rid of it. It is part of the. It's just part of being human, and everything that's part of being human is kind of, I would say, amplified in the media. Okay, so we are all naturally fearful. There's good forms. There's healthy fear. There's unhealthy fear, and media is both healthy and unhealthy. Okay, at the end of the day, anything people touch becomes imbued with the characteristics of the person. Okay, so when you make art, when you make literature, when you make media, when you're a politician, your ideologies, whatever it is, they are imbued with whatever it is that is in your character. Okay, and sometimes that's a healthy fear, sometimes that's an unhealthy fear, or sometimes you're not fearful at all. You're a psychopath who doesn't have fear, but you recognize it in other people, and you use it in a Machiavellian way to control them, or to lift yourself up in the eyes of society so that you can accrue more power. But yeah, I think that what is interesting to note is the atomization of society and how we consume media. We're going into smaller and smaller groups, and the algorithms and such are getting to know us. The marketeers are getting to know us, and they're able to know you as an individual, what your wants are, what your desires are, what your psychological profile is. And perhaps it may well be the case that the algorithm is creating a unique fear profile for you. I don't think necessarily a fear profile exists, but what I mean is the media you're consuming is algorithmically being driven by your own personal fears. And that is an interesting phenomenon. Maybe, but I don't know if that is the case. I don't know if the algorithm generally gives you information you view positively, or if it gives you information that you view negatively. I would say it does give you information that you view negative, because if, for example, if you consume a lot of right-wing media that is against such and such a minority, those videos, those articles, those newspaper articles tend to turn up on your algorithm. So yeah, it does seem that the algorithms, the AI algorithms, are tailoring the fear narrative individually for each of us, and that's very interesting. I mean, that will be utilized by politicians who will be able to look at the analytics behind the algorithms, who is reading what, how many of them are reading it, and that will all be very useful information for the powers that be. I mean, this is probably stuff they're already doing and they've already used. Cambridge Analytica and all these crowds are probably doing this already. So yeah, they're able to see what you're afraid of, what you're incensed by, and they're able to then see what the great majority is afraid of, and maybe bring that to the public, the floor of public awareness as a pressing issue in the media. And maybe they'll be able to do false flags. Maybe they'll be able to have rhetoric that is precisely precisely orchestrated to be persuasive because of your fears, analytically speaking. So yeah, this is where we are. We're already at that stage, but it's just interesting how, you know, the AI is going to be able to make you afraid personally. All right, and it's going to be able to know what will incense you and get a reaction from you. I don't know what they want to do with that individually for each of us on the computer, but it might be to make you buy something or to donate to something or to avoid something. I don't know, but it is pretty scary times we're in, guys.
Read what? The documentation of Murad Jacob.
I do agree that, you know, we live in scary times, but when haven't we lived in scary times? I would argue ever since humans were first conceived. It's always been pretty terrifying for us, you know. And like you say that there's good media and there's bad media. I would kind of disagree. I think most media is bad, you know. I think most media is bad for your brain. There's a thing called over sensory overload, over information overload. I think that's a big thing too, you know.
Well, I mean, would you not agree that like media that gives you power to look after your health, that tells you the truth about how to manage your finances, stuff like that, that is good?
I guess, but like there was a time where humans didn't do any of that. So like, you know, to me that's not really, you know, set in stone. Like there was a time where I didn't need to look up my finance. It was already there when I was like either a primitive hunter gatherer or like, you know, or something like that, you know.
Right.
Yeah, and as for health, like, you know, like I guess, but like isn't it kind of weird that it's kind of unnatural that humans live long anyways? Like we take new age medicine. By new age, I mean modern medicine that makes us live past 40, when back in the day that was barely the case, and that was for most of human history, you know. So yeah, it's pretty surreal how that is, you know.
I think a lot of people died back in the day though because of injuries, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's how it was for most of human history. I want to say like what we have now of modern medicine is only like 10 or 15% of human history, you know. And given how anything could happen, who knows if that we're going to either advance with that medication, and if we do, who's going to be in charge of it? You know, is it going to be big pharmaceutical companies who are going to, you know, abuse us as consumers and as, you know, patients, you know. Yeah, so that's what I think, you know.
So I mean, how do you feel about fear narratives in the media? Do you still find yourself? I personally do. I get like consumed by them sometimes, you know.
Oh, do I find myself being consumed by the fear mongering and like fear manufactured narratives? No, I don't. I really don't. I used to when I was like a teenager. I don't anymore because like I follow a thing that, you know, this mantra. It's like an online meme, but it's true. Like it's simple words. It's called nothing ever happens. You know, like nothing really does. Yeah. So like maybe something down the line could happen. Like I'm still genuinely pessimistic about human conditions, but I see it as more as like a sudden explosion, something like that, you know, which rarely happens. It's gradually, to me, it's like a gradual like decay of like, you know, state of like the state of the world. Only if ever a few times where there was like a big massive cataclysm that really rocked us. Like good examples would be the Black Plague. Another one would be like the worst year in human history. I think that was either 536, where there was like no sun, and like the Byzantine. That was a horrible year. What else happened? I guess like, you know, the world wars could have been, but I would argue they were already, you know, the seeds were already there, but it could have been, I guess, avoided in some ways, but not in other ways, you know. What else? General things like that. I guess like any like viral outbreak back then, like in like I already said Black Death, but any of like the Spanish flu, you know, was unexpected. Yeah.
Yeah, you said nothing ever happens, but you know, I like that. I like that meme as well. But you know, sometimes you do have to critically assess the news. Okay, and how do you think? How would you advise people to pull back from being too emotional with content? Like if it's fear inducing, how would you tell people? How would you tell people to take a step back and analyze it analytically?
I always say like as long as there isn't any like bombs dropping on your home, then I think you're okay. You know, that's what I would say to them. As long as there isn't some like paramilitary death squad at your home, at your doorstep, I think you're all right. Most of these people who get freaked out live in like the first world. Like they live in and they see the news all around the world, but like they're kind of in their own bubble sometimes. Now, could something happen to them? Of course they can, but like it's not happening currently. And yeah, I guess.
What about? Is there any way of defeating the system? Like, as I said, the way the media shines a light on certain things without shining it on others. Like as I said, for example, problems could be solved by taxing the super who the tax loopholes where they're not paying tax. Things like that should be day in day out. You know what I mean? But it's not.
Yeah. The thing. Oh, yeah. Well, the thing about me is that like I don't think there is any solutions to where we're at right now. I don't think there was ever any. I think that well, the thing about I guess taxes is that like I don't think they should exist in general. Like my views are extremely niche and like very extreme radical. I don't want to say them outright because I don't want to bring too much attention to myself more than I already am. But yeah, we could tax the rich, but then I would generally agree with that, but then well, what else is there to solve? There's still going to be economic inequality. There's still going to be general distrust amongst certain groups of people in the demographics. I don't think there's an end all be all solution to our problems. Unfortunately, I think what you can do best is just I know this sounds pretty selfish and individualistic. I know it is, but truth be told, you can only watch out for yourself. In this type of world.
The galaxy, not the universe.
What happened?
The heat death of the galaxy, not the universe. That's what happened. That's what was knowledgeable.
Yeah, but like, who knows how the universe could end? Like, God Himself could end it.
I didn't say the universe. I said the galaxy.
The galaxy. Ooh, well, the galaxy is in the I don't know, to be honest. I don't really trust all the sciences just yet. I'm pretty.
Are you a flat earther? Are you a flat earther?
Oh no, absolutely not.
Why don't you? Why wouldn't you believe that
the
galaxy would end or have a heat death?
I just well, it could end, but it could end in like other ways. There's other theories as to how our galaxy could end and how the universe could end. It's not just scientific.
Well, it's not just the Big Bang Theory.
What?
The TV show Big Bang Theory. It's not just a Big Bang TV show. It's like an actual theory that the fucking galaxy ends. Pardon my language. Pardon my speech, or for using my First Amendment right.
Well, truth be told, I have never seen the Big Bang Theory, the show.
Thanks, brother Marcus. Guys, we have Yerf Dogs here. He says the way to beat the system is for enough people to walk away and stop participating. Problem is, to be effective, that requires the people who contribute the most to walk away, which they never will. Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with Steve.
Do you remember we were watching? You weren't here. We were watching this TED talk, and there was an Australian journalist, and she was talking like how you have the power, you can walk away. If you tune out, then that they will change what they're doing. She's talking about the news. Like they'll stop publishing stuff that isn't in our favor. But I think Steve's right here. That would mean everybody would have to walk away, and I just don't think people are intellectually mature enough. Maybe they're not educated enough to think like that. I even though I just think that we're kind of still in the age of people believing what they read without questioning it.
Yeah,
it's almost like the Bible has just been printed for the first time. Sometimes when I walk around,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Because it's like people are just taking because they're hearing it from an official or from a news outlet. Then these people are speaking up with a very articulate manner. They're using bigger words than me. They must know what they're talking about. Or either that. I do think sometimes there's an element of tuning out as well. You can't blame people for tuning out sometimes because I used to do that a lot as well. When you have this stuffy arsehole in this grey bespectacled man moralizing, talking in an uppity accent, and you just can't even be bothered to listen to the fucker sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's very dangerous because you do have to listen to these fuckers to see what they're talking about. And the thing is, what happens in these situations is the people who are zoning out and can't bear to listen to these arseholes, they go by the wayside, and he's kind of only catering then for the people who are listening. And generally speaking, the people who are listening to him are the more privileged people, men of his ilk. And so it becomes this self-defeating kind of prophecy where the people who tune out end up losing more and more again and again because they're just not sitting it through and listening and trying to think about it. They're just emotionally disturbed, as it were. They're switching off too quickly.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, like people don't think critically, and here's the thing though, is that I don't think the masses ever will. I think thinking critically is antithetical to the concept of the mass population, the populace, the demographic.
It's probably too scary as well. Actually, causes too many problems. It is debilitating. It's debilitating and destabilizing.
Yeah, and I generally think that. Oh, sorry.
Hello to last minute Lacey, by the way. Hopefully you'll join us.
Hi, Lacey.
On here.
Sorry for interrupting, but that was one of the most underrated things you have said on these streams. That's very useful knowledge.
What's that, Seb?
It's just that if one tunes out and can't bear to listen, one can't get the information, I guess.
Right.
One will just get fucked, right?
So if you tune out, you lose you'll lose any possible power that you might have, because knowledge is power, and if you don't have the knowledge, you can't sit at the table and have the conversation.
Yeah.
You can't react with you can't react to what people are saying with points that are critical to the conversation if you haven't listened to what they're saying in the first place.
But what if the cranky old man? What if that could be used as a metaphor for existence? One doesn't pay attention to.
Well, sometimes I think they put the most boring the most uncharismatic people to kind of talk about issues in the media sometimes. It's like they drive you away from the topic, Sometimes I think, are they doing this on purpose? Are they picking the most obnoxious arsehole to present something so that we're driven away from being able to listen to the fucker, Maybe sometimes doing that, they're not going to want a personable person, friendly, amenable, someone who you'd think of as your uncle or something to tell you how fucked you are and how they're fucking you up the arse with the next pile of regulations. No, they're going to tell you in a real stuffy manner, in words that you can't really understand, in a voice that you find condescending, that makes you want to switch off.
so that you don't know what's happening to you. And by the time you do know it's already happened, then you're completely fucked.
Or maybe they're playing the heel, like a lot of people long ago, the wrestlers of the past, even Muhammad Ali, a lot of the fighters, they knew how to play the heel, turn the audience against them. So maybe some of these people spoke.
Yeah.
They do it too.
Guys, I'm going to open up. So anybody wants to come on here now? We've got Lacey there. I don't know if Brother Marcus can come on now, or Godfrey is there. Pseudo history. I don't know if that's you, Publius, is it? Pseudo history. If you want to come on here, Divine Hazel. Anybody there? Just you can come on. The link is there.
Yeah.
If Van Hazel would know a lot about the subconscious limiting beliefs.
But I do think
all this.
Yeah, she would know. She would know. I do think that the moral panic is like they pick the zeitgeist moral panic. They never let an opportunity go amiss. You know, so if something happens, right? Especially the more unusual it is, I think the better for the powers that be. So if unfortunately, for example, if there's a child killed or a bomb goes off somewhere, these types of things will grab your attention. Okay, so the more they can milk it, and the longer they can milk that for, even though it's a rare occurrence, etc., the longer they can milk it for, the longer they can bring it into the public's state of awareness. The longer they can take over the zeitgeist with that, the better for them, because that means they can get away with other types of stuff in the background. You know, I firmly believe that they will. The news is their best friend in many ways, because there's always something happening in the world, and they've always got their finger on the pulse, trying to find the story that can take over the news, you know, for a few hours, whilst the news that should be being spoken about is never spoken about. By the way, I'm not saying don't talk about the fucking people killing the children, all these types of things. No. These are terrible things. We should be talking about these things. Yeah. But what I'm saying is we should also be talking about things that really matter as well, such as, you know, why the fucking super rich aren't paying their way in the world, why they own all the manufacturing, why they own all the services, why they get all the profit from the consumers, and they take it offshore and they don't give back to the system. Why the super rich aren't paying taxes, but they're taking all the money from all around the world and hiding it offshore somewhere. Why is that happening? And they're closing down businesses left, right, and centre. The small businesses, they haven't got a hope of opening up these days, unless there's some crappy cupcake business or dog grooming business or something like that. No offense if that's what you're doing, but it's very hard to run a business nowadays, you know, without being some kind of cliche thing, you know, that a working mom does or something, you know. And you know, it's getting worse and worse. It's getting worse and worse. It's getting worse and worse. Sorry to be overly negative. But
I agree with you. It's getting worse and worse. I agree with it's only going to get even more worse for me, you know. And like the way I see it is that, like, thank God that humans don't live to, like, you know, 200, you know, because like at least I have a way out of here, you know, that's guaranteed, you know, that is a natural death, you know, at least I have something to look forward to. I know that sounds even more bleak, but that's just how I feel.
I think sometimes that's our undoing. Dying is our undoing. Is in like our life. Like if we live for 200 years and we had like 50 years of a period where we were like acting at our best, but that's not the case for humans. I mean, we reach our peak and then we start to fall off. I mean, I don't know what years of a human's life we're at our best, you know, optimum level. Is it like 25 to 55 or something in the work? I don't know. Depends on the person, I suppose. It could be longer, or it could be shorter. But I think sometimes the problem with humans is that kind of trajectory, the trajectory of life. It's like the time when you're at your best, when you've accrued enough power and knowledge, isn't possibly long enough. And when you do have the knowledge, often you're surrounded by people who don't have it or who don't agree with you, and your time is wasted talking crap to people who don't care.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like, why do you think I do these things? You know, why do you
Oh yeah,
just
to talk crap to people who don't care. Is that you're a glutton for punishment? I'm
yeah.
joking, Basti. I'm joking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah, like what was I gonna say? Yeah, like I'll tell you this, I'm someone in my early to mid 20s, and I'll tell you that my life it wasn't so, eventful or good, up until now even, like so, and who knows, but then again,
You got your whole life. You might have some very good times. You're only a very young man. Fortune can change in one day. It really
let's
can. You
go.
never know. You never know. You never know. I do hope for the best for you, brother.
Oh, thank you.
Something I'd like to say is that a pattern I've noticed is that people tend to have very little faith in each other, and like if something bad happens, people will just assume like this person won't make it out of this situation or something. There's just very little faith people have in each other.
Right.
But then a lot of people like to go on about how people are stupid, right? So while that's a crude word, and I guess the point
Yeah, I don't think
is,
people are stupid. I just think they've got their heads full of the wrong information. And it's not their fault.
No,
Often, you know what I mean?
I think
Miseducated.
yeah.
nah.
But my point is, if everybody goes on about everybody being stupid, right? And while that's a crude word, yeah, that means one can't fully trust them. So if they say you can't climb out of this thing you're in, then one shouldn't trust them. People has gotten out of far stickier situations, or I don't know what situation you are in. So, but people has gotten out of a lot of stuff. People has survived wars. People has survived getting shot. People have survived cold temperatures, hot temperatures, burns, radiation. There's a lot of stuff people has been able to gnaw themselves through.
So we have pseudo history who says life is just a pit stop, and then we have last minute later. He says, "Well, I think it's more than just a pit stop. It's more important than that." Yeah, I would agree with last minute later. Life is very important, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
It's definitely a conundrum. It's definitely difficult, and the fact that life exists. I believe it does impose on us a duty to try and do something about it in a way where we take it seriously. I'm not saying build a red button or anything like that. I'm just saying there is a duty imposed on us as thinkers, as Homo sapiens, to kind of think about what the hell is going on here and how we can do it better, if at all. Yeah, I think we have a duty, brother Marcus. I know.
Well,
I say ideally speaking.
I'll
Ideally speaking.
definitely say this. Me and your epistemology on life are pretty divergent. I'll say that much. I think that most people don't recognize a duty, and thus they're kind of talking heads to me. Like, now, don't think I'm better. Don't think I think I'm better than anyone else. I'm not. But like, do I think I have a duty? Yeah, to only keep myself alive and to keep myself, as healthy as possible until my end of days. But besides that,
Yeah.
I don't think I have any external duty for anyone else. I only have an
Right.
internal duty.
Well,
Yes,
I do, brother Marcus, as he didn't ask to be here. Now you're giving me extra work.
exactly.
No,
Yeah,
I do kind of, I do believe in like the social contract. I believe there's certain things, whether you like it or not, that once you exist, they are just matter of fact. Like you have to behave in a certain way, for example, because if you don't, shit's going to happen to you. It's in your interest to go outside and be friendly as much as possible, or to be kind and not to be overtly antisocial, because you will come a cropper, especially if you're like me and you're down a good few tiers in society. You know what I mean? Obviously, if you're up higher up, you can do what the fuck you want. Apparently,
even then,
But as in regards to a duty, do we have a duty to think about things to try and make things better? I think whether we like it or not, we do. I think that's part of the problem here. Like
So you guys
it's a duty to, first of all, it's a duty to yourself, okay? Because if you don't take it seriously, you will suffer more. And secondly, I think if you have the ability to help others in some way or other, then that should be brought out from you. Now, obviously, I know the system we're in doesn't favour that. So we are put in boxes. We're miseducated, and we are not often given the power to flourish.
of course not.
How do you grab? Brother Marcus should come on and talk to us about this.
Yeah, well, I'll say.
I know people get annoyed. I know people get annoyed when you start talking about duties, because it sounds tyrannical. But I mean it kind of ideally speaking. I don't think I wouldn't say like it's kind of like a spiritual duty. You know what I mean? It's like how can I say this without being
spiritual duties. Well, like your spiritual duty would like. I'm sorry for interrupting.
Mel.
Yeah.
But like I guess like there's a lot of different interpretations for a spiritual duty.
I think I'm just sounding like my dad. Do your best.
Yeah,
pull your socks up. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, but I think that a lot of different religious traditions, they have a different interpretation of duty. There's the layman, kind of like what you're trying to do, D&W, and then there's the more monastic, esoteric ones that really like, no, our life is for God alone, and the world, and there's some Christian sects, especially the Eastern Orthodox ones, that says to have a friendship with the world is to have a friendship with death. So like there's a lot of different interpretations for a spiritual duty, as they say. That really runs counter to each other. It's almost like a honeycomb of different interpretations of a spiritual duty, and like you choose one. I don't care if you want to do that, but I think of myself as doing something else with my time here.
That's fair enough. I mean, I wouldn't impose anything on anybody. I said ideally you should be taking it seriously and trying to help, but I'm not saying it should be legislated and that, like, because you can't legislate something like that.
Possible.
No, you couldn't, because it would cause World War III, wouldn't it? Everybody, well, what is the duty? What type of duty should we be imposed? Or what type of duty should we be legislating for, etc., etc.?
Yeah, this should be a drinking game. Every time you should be a drinking game. Every time you guys fucking use the word duty, take it.
Yeah.
Oh, we don't actually say it that much.
Are you kidding me? You just said it like.
Yeah, I know, but that's just in this last little segment.
And guess
we don't actually say it much usually.
Yeah, but in this stream, or the people in this stream tend to be more ethically conscientious than an average person, right? So it makes more sense people would toward duty.
Yeah, but there are certain duties you have in life, whether you like it or not, like a duty of care. These things are imposed on you.
Oh yeah.
By being around town, there are duties imposed on you. Like I believe in the duty of care. Like I believe when you walk around, you shouldn't recklessly endanger someone. You should take into consideration others. I think the duty of care is a good thing.
Yeah, and like everyone has their own unique duties that are unique to them in relation to them.
Disgusting.
Yeah. Everybody has their duties.
Hey, do you have a duty, Seb?
Yeah, I have a duty to be able to do all the duties as well as possible.
You got
to do more duties.
Pseudo history is Tyler, I believe. They write very like you, Tyler.
Everybody on this channel is full of duty.
Yeah.
Divine Hazel says we are to uncover the truth and share them. That's our duty. I've opened a bag of worms here.
Yeah, especially with
a bag of duty. More like a bag of duty.
A bag of duties. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a good topic for a show one day. I don't know. If you were made a tyrant, okay, if you found yourself pulling the levers, what duties would you force on people, or what would you
I
a
would
moral or legal obligation, responsibility, a task or action that someone's required to perform?
I would leave those duties in a burning paper bag on their front porch and ring the bell and run away.
Mine would be, don't be an arsehole, but then I got to define being an arsehole. So you're just going to keep going on and on. Oh dear.
Yeah.
Sorry?
What is my name to duty? I changed
Sorry, say
my
that
name
again?
to duty. I changed my name to duty just now.
Okay.
Good.
Unfortunately, I'm on duty for my dog all the time. That's it. I'm picking up poop. That's my duty is to pick up dog poop.
That's cute.
Whether I like it or not.
Yeah.
I have a duty to commend you for that, since it could provide utility.
I can send you some if you like it that much. I'll send you some in the post.
My favorite word is duty. My second favorite word is utility, because it.
Hey.
One has to do all the duties to get as much utility as one can get. It's hard to.
I definitely believe in the duty of care. Number one, I think that is a necessary duty for everyone to try and abide by.
Yeah, like
Now, in terms of something more positive, in terms of a duty to do something, an actual positive or prescriptive duty, I genuinely believe if you have certain skills, certain abilities, it seems a shame to use them for bad rather than good. Now, what is good, what is bad, that is a problem as well, I know. But it does seem a shame to waste your potential in life, you know? It seems a shame not to help others somehow, you know, flourish. But then again, if you're an ultra hard pessimist, which I am a lot of the time, like in helping someone, you could be helping them cause more suffering to someone else. So one never sleeps because there's no good answers.
Nope. Well, I can sleep just fine without knowing any of the answers, because I made peace with it. So like I'm all right. I'm all right. I'm just.
Well, I'm glad you're all right.
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm all right. Like I want to say, like 80% of the time, there's that 20% that's like external, or like internal measures, like I hate to say this word again, but I have a personal duty to take my medication and exercise, eat well,
Okay.
Like, that's my duty. Like if I don't do that, I will get sick and I will die. Straight up, like that's my duty. Yeah.
Yes, and to yourself as well. To like whether you like it or not, you have a duty to yourself when you can to look after yourself as much as possible, because it doesn't make sense. It's irrational not to.
Well, of course, yeah. I might be pessimistic, but I don't want to make it worse for myself by being unhealthy until my end of days, So like I just try to keep it healthy by, doing the stuff that I need and must do, But the thing is that no one's forcing me to like do this. Like I can just be unhealthy and be reckless about my health and not take any of my medication, but I won't, because like I know what's the alternative. I personally know what's the alternative. I was almost gonna face the worst outcome, So like about 2 or a year and a half ago, So I know what could be, But I'm all right for the majority of my time,
I don't know. So that's related to something else. Yeah. I did say about the positive duty. Yeah, I did say that. That's different.
It almost reminds me
Yeah.
of the arguments for like positive and negative rights, you know, that are in political discussion, you know.
There is a phenomenon where if one says a word too many times, the word is going to sound very strange. Like maybe Noodles experienced this with the word duty. Now the word duty seems strange to me because
Right. Does anybody else want to come on here at this late hour? You can do, because I'm going to go soon.
Would be nice.
But we could have a chat one day about duties. If you want to. Do you have any duties as a human being? To yourself or others? That might be one for the show one day soon. Although I am trying to, well, we will do that, but I have to stick to this next two. I mean, there was like an agenda. I think we've done 2 of them now, so there's only 2 more to do for what was on the agenda in March. I think it was illusions in society and such. Well, it is late, Brother Marcus, but you can come on and talk. You can talk to the others if you want. I don't mind hanging around for a little bit for you if you want to come on, Brother Marcus. But I do have to go.
BM, yep.
Oh, okay. But last minute Lacey's still here. She says she's too tired and she's eating, so not tonight. Oh well, there's always next time, last minute Lacey.
Yeah.
And if you do want to catch up with last minute Lacey, you go on her channel as well. And she's also in the previous lives here, so there's plenty of her talking there. You can replay them, so you don't have to worry about missing her voice too much. Right. So I suppose we'll leave it there then.
All right.
Tyler, are you there?
Yeah.
Tyler, what would you like to say about fear in general as a kind of the way it's utilized in the media or by politicians or by agents of society, agents of societal control?
It's an uncommon belief, but actually a person can be stimulated by deoxyribonucleic acid in their gray matter and produce psychopathic tendencies.
Okay. Well, what's that got to do with the topic?
Like that's non-genetic. Like that's absolutely not genetic. Like you can just
brother.
You can just
Mm-hmm.
don't believe me.
All right, brother. Okay, Tyler, thank you very much. Noodles, have you got anything to say? Thank you, Brother Marcus.
Yeah.
Noodles, have you got anything to say about fear in society, like from the media, from politicians, from agents of societal control, from corporations, from whoever you want, whoever's influencing us, whoever is putting ideas in our heads, telling us stories, controlling the cultural narratives? Would you like to say anything about fear in that regard? Noodles is eating his noodles. He's not there. So, Bastian.
Yes, sir.
It's down to you, I believe, and then Seb.
What do you want me to like say about fear and stuff like that?
Yeah, just closing remarks.
Closing remarks is that don't feel too bad that you don't know what's going on, because most of us don't, except for the elites and the top 1%.
Okay. Anything else? You're muted now, so I presume not. Thank you, Bastian.
No. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, yeah. Just don't let. Sorry, someone interrupted me outside of my house. But just don't feel too bad that you don't know something. But it's still up to you to know some things. You always know that life is very crazy and chaotic and sometimes dangerous. But it can either make you or break you. Yeah, I think that's enough for me. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you very much, Bastian, and you made some very good points when you came on. I appreciate it, brother. It's good to always see you here. Divine Hazel says, love to you, D-Lab. I always enjoy hearing your voice. Thank you, Divine Hazel. I enjoy hearing yours too. Wish you to come on. We have Seb here. Seb, in closing, is there anything you'd like to say about fear in the media, in politics, its usage in advertising, education, in societal control, anything along those lines?
Yes.
Seb.
There's I thought about how it applies to oneself. That's what gives me more of an emotional connection to what you are saying. How does it relate to the people who gets manipulated? Uh, Maybe they get subconscious limiting beliefs. Maybe they stop believing in themselves that they will be able to do something. That's important to consider. The way I see it, it's a street fight. It, one has to. That's the mindset I have.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Seb. Good to have you here. Thank you for everybody who joined in tonight in the comments. Yerp Dog, Brother Marcus, Divine Hazel, Pseudo History, Last Minute Lacey, anybody who I've missed out, thank you so much for commenting. I appreciate it. And hopefully you'll come on next time and chat as well in voice. Thank you to all the participants here tonight. Seb, Bastian, Noodles, Julius or Tyler. And is there anybody I've missed out? Sorry if I have missed you out. It wasn't on purpose. But yeah, fear, interesting. And it is something to be mindful of, you know, to think about what is having its time in the limelight, what has been shone upon by the lights of the media, by politics, and asking the pertinent question: is this the most important matter? Are there other pressing matters that should also be getting into the public eye? Are there things that need to be said also? I'm not saying that all the things in Moral Panic are or that are brought up in the media are bad or unnecessary. I'm definitely not saying that. But I'm definitely asking people to question what it is that the media, that politicians are trying to do. Are they trying to cause derision in society? Are they really trying to bring people together to create a harmonious society? Or are they trying to divide and conquer, to split us up, to make us less powerful? And are they trying to sow seeds of discord? And, you know, are they trying to distract you from what they're trying to get away with? Are they pointing the finger at others so that you won't point the finger at them? Thank you to everybody who joined again. We'll come back on Friday. Hopefully, I'll do a little bit more planning. Yeah, I have to do that. I'm very sorry for ineffectual planning. Take care and have a very good time, whatever time it is on the clock, wherever you are. Good night from here.
All right.